Sometimes we
All
bring
right,
staff
welcome everyone to this afternoon's
Oh, come on, man.
episode of,
Could we get Mr. Constantine some additional space on the dais?
you know,
Make him sit down where Grant
he could sit in
sits.
Grant's seat and spread out. We're going to call to order, back to order,
I'm here. You can
our
talk about
county commission meeting out of recess. We're a little bit late today, but we're getting it together, I can tell. Thank you all so much. I'll take a motion to accept
Move to
proofs.
approve publication. Second.
There's a motion by Delary, second by Zembauer to approve proofs, to submit proofs of publication. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So this afternoon, on our agenda, we actually have just one public hearing item. That is a, it's a quasi-judicial item, and so I'm going to read our rules for public hearings this afternoon. This is how we're going to proceed. Our staff is going to present the item that's up for consideration with a staff recommendation, and the board will then have an opportunity to ask questions of staff when the presentation has completed. The applicant will then have an opportunity to make a presentation to the board, and the board will have a chance to ask questions of the applicant once their presentation has completed. Members of the public who are here who are interested in speaking on this item, either for or against, there is a yellow form out in the lobby. If you would please fill that out and give it to Ms. Beach here at the front. We will want to have all of those turned in before we begin presentations today. So if you would like to speak on this item, we need you to fill out the yellow form, indicate whether you are for or against. And if you don't want to necessarily speak, but you would like your comments submitted for the record, you're welcome to fill out the green form and also present that to Ms. Beach, and the comments will be shared down the dais for us. Speakers should clearly state their name and address for the record, and whether you're for or against. They will be given 3 minutes to speak unless you're the official spokesperson for an organization. If a board member has questions regarding the speaker's comments, an opportunity will be given once the speaker's time is expired. In accordance with the operating policies and procedures of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners, Section 2.175, Public Participation Before the Board, speakers shall limit their comments to the subject being considered by the board. All public comments shall avoid personal attacks, abusive language, and redundancy. Disrespectful, rude, irrelevant, or slanderous remarks or disruptive behavior may subject the individual to removal from the chambers. The chairman may curtail repetitious comments. The clerk's office is required to retain any documents that are presented to the board today, so if you show it to us, whether it's a photograph or any other map of some sort, if you show it to us, be prepared to leave it with the clerk. Once all of the speakers have been heard, then the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal if necessary. We will then close the public hearing, and the matter will be put in the hands of the commission. Following a motion and a second, there will be board discussion and a vote. Commissioners who do not cast objecting votes are considered to have voted in support of the motion. While the board certainly welcomes all comments today from anyone who has interest in this item, Florida law requires that the board's decision in a quasi-judicial action, which is the one before us today, be supported by competent, substantial evidence presented to the board during the hearing of the application. Competent, substantial evidence is such evidence as a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion. There must be a factual basis in the record to support the opinion testimony from both expert and non-expert witnesses. Persons presenting testimony may rely on factual information that they present, that is presented by county staff, that the applicant presents, or on factual information included in the county staff report to support their testimony. All persons who present written materials to the board for consideration must ensure that a copy is provided to the clerk for being included in the board's record of the proceeding and official minutes. Has any commissioner received any oral or written communication regarding the quasi-judicial item? If so, please disclose the substance of the communication and identify the person making the communication. Commissioner Zembauer?
Madam Chair, I have had meetings with some of the council members. I've spoke to the mayor. I've spoke to many residents, meetings in my office and in the public, numerous emails. All have been memorialized and submitted electronically.
All right. Commissioner Herr?
Mine have all been submitted electronically as well.
Commissioner Delary?
Madam Chairman, I've met with various residents as well as county staff, as well as elected officials from the city of Winter Springs, and everything, and citizens, and everything has been submitted electronically.
Okay. Commissioner Constantine?
And mine is changing by the minute. And I submitted all of what I had, as well as anything that happened just this afternoon. And it was all been done electronically, and it's being updated as we speak.
Right. I also have had ex parte communication on this item. Meetings in my office, all of the emails have been submitted for the record, including conversations with Mayor McCann, Commissioners Resnick, Colangelo, Elliott, Johnson, and Benton. The binder that was delivered to our office, I think all of us received that late yesterday afternoon. It appears to be very lengthy. I have not had time since yesterday afternoon and then this morning's proceedings to review it, but it was in my possession, so I want to definitely get that on the record.
And I just want to make sure Madam Clerk received a copy. There was not a copy, there was not, in my understanding, a copy provided by the city for the clerk for this hearing purpose. If not, we'll make sure that they get a copy.
I did not receive the binder.
Okay. We'll make sure that you get what you need.
At the end of the meeting, I'll give her mine.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Staff on this item, Mr. Robinson, if you would.
Is that good enough?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Doug Robinson with Development Services. I'm here to present this item for Tuscaloosa Storage Plan Development, PD rezone. Yes, thank you very much. So the applicant is requesting a rezone from M1 industrial and A1 agricultural zoning to PD, plan development, to allow proposed self-storage facility on one parcel that totals about 4.81 acres. I'm going to keep my comments really brief, so I'm hoping, it covers everything, but if not, I'm happy to answer any questions afterward. Wanted to start off by saying that this initially came in as a pre-application back in December of 2021. Staff did review that and provided comments and suggestions to encourage the applicant to contact the city of Winter Springs about possible annexation. That also occurred when the straight rezoning came in to zone the A1 to M1. That was a prior application that's not before you today. It was withdrawn and then replaced by the current application, which is the plan development rezone. So as I mentioned, the site does have it has the split zoning of M1 on the western portion of the property up against Tuscaloosa Road, and A1 on the eastern half. Almost approximately half of the property is A1 to the east. The future land use designation is industrial, which does allow for the self-storage use in the future land use. But of course, the A1 zoning is really the question at hand. I'm going back to the aerial here. You can see the property in the aerial on the right side there is vacant. It has been vacant since approximately 2007 when the High Flavored Meats building was demolished. We've heard that facility probably closed around 2001 or 2002 and then was subsequently demolished maybe 5 years later. Property sit vacant. It does have an access point off of Tuscaloosa Road, which the applicant proposes to use for access. Going back to the zoning and future land use map, the site is almost completely surrounded by the City of Winter Springs Town Center T4 general urban zone, with the exception of property that's to the west and a little bit northwest of the site. You can see the orange on the map to the west. That's the medium density residential that's in place on those properties that currently have A1 zoning. There are, I believe, 2 single-family homes sitting on those properties that are up against Tuscaloosa Road, and I can't quite recall what's on the A1 to the northwest of that. The site in question does contain wetlands that are primarily on the southern and eastern, kind of southeastern corner of the property. I'll get into that a little bit more in a moment, but it seems the applicant is proposing to maintain those wetlands with buffers as well, so that is, I think, something that comes into play with a screening from the property. As I mentioned, site would access off of Tuscaloosa Road. The site is also outside of, I misspoke during the planning and zoning meeting when I said that it was in the City of Winter Springs water and sewer service area, so I need to go on the record to correct that it's actually not in anybody's service area. It's not in the county service area and not in the City of Winter Springs service area currently. I do know that the applicant did reach out about annexing and getting that connection, and I'm told that verbally that the ability to connect with the proposed use was denied. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about that, but I want to go ahead and get that out there. So going back to the proposal, it's a proposed self-storage facility which would be 3 stories high with a 35-foot high flat roof and a 45-foot high to the highest architectural element on the roof. That was intended to be consistent with the architectural, the Winter Springs Town Center architectural guidelines to provide architectural features that would be consistent with the guidelines. The intensity of the site would be a 0.65 floor area ratio. The current master development plan shows that allowing up to roughly 107,000 square feet of self-storage space in more than one structure on the site, although there's predominant structure along Tuscaloosa Road. The applicant is proposing the PD to help create compatibility with the surrounding area. I believe that's probably the core issue today. As part of the PD, the applicant is committing to several design criteria that would lessen the impacts to the surrounding area. I'm going to go through a few of those, but this is not an exhaustive list. You'll see those in the development order as well as the ordinance. So one of those is, and I think I'll switch over to the MDP, the Master Development Plan, which you probably won't be able to see, but in case I need to reference that. So the building exterior, as I mentioned, would be consistent with the architectural, the town center guidelines of City of Winter Springs. The height of the buildings on the 200 feet of the eastern portion of the property where you see the A1 zoning or that portion would be restricted to a height of 12 feet, 200 feet from the eastern property boundary inwards. The applicant also proposes to screen views of mechanical and fire protection equipment so that it's not seen from outside the site. Also reducing light spillage on the surrounding properties. They went beyond the land development code requirement of 0.5 foot candles, bringing it down to 0.25 foot candles. And the other aspect of designing to make sure that external storage bay doors were not readily seen off-site. And I think the applicant will probably go over that a little bit more, but even in the structure on the second floor, they are proposing to use architectural glass, which would prohibit you from seeing the storage bay doors through the windows. And then not a design aspect, but restricting the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. We believe protecting the wetlands and the upland buffer as well. Creating an upland buffer around the wetlands, and also proposing landscape buffers of 25 feet on the western boundary along Tuscaloosa Road, 20 feet to the east along Strong Tree Way, which backs up to Tuscaloosa Crossings Town Homes project, and 10 feet on the north and south of the property. To the north is currently a vacant site. And to the south is actually part of Tuscaloosa Crossings. It appears to be a conservation easement, wetlands open space conservation easement area. And that would be 10 feet as well on those. They would be required to do plantings in those landscape buffers, which I'm happy to go over at some point if you have further questions about those. So going back to the concern about the water and sewer connection, probably one of the key issues with that has to do with the fire protection, and I know that came up during the community meeting. So the applicant is proposing to have on-site well and septic system versus connecting to the City of Winter Springs water and sewer. And this did present a concern for us about fire protection. Our staff reviewed this and did provide input into the development order to the effect of saying that an alternative fire protection system is required and must be found in compliance with the Florida Fire Prevention Code prior to the final development plan approval. Of course, the final development plan approval would be the next step if they receive approval from you today. So speaking a little bit about future reviews, that would be the final development plan, which may include engineering, and then a subsequent step would be the site plan approval. Staff does find that the proposed use and intensity is consistent and compatible with the Seminole County's comprehensive plan and the industrial future land use designation. We also find that proposed PD zoning classification is consistent with the county's land development code and surrounding development in the area. And that is primarily through the ability to use performance standards and these conditions in the PD to buffer and screen the facility from the surroundings. The staff, regarding the community meeting, the applicant did hold a community meeting on March 14th at 6 p.m. I believe that was held in the Foundry Church in Winter Springs. I understand that it was well attended with over 87 attendees. I understand it went on for a couple hours, and there were a lot of questions and concerns. Some of that I've covered in what I've presented here, but I'm sure you'll hear more tonight. And then I also have been told that there's been some concerns about that meeting in terms of its capacity and its ability to accommodate everyone comfortably, and I don't really know. I wasn't there at the meeting, so I can't say firsthand. As far as opposition to this proposal, we've had I've received 3 emails, one of them in which you just was received yesterday, so it's been submitted to you today, just now, and I believe the other 2 were in the packet for the agenda item. We also know that the City of Winter Springs opposes the project and has submitted a lot of material to you as well that you just mentioned. As well as homeowners associations have spoke out against the project as well. Having said all that, staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners, I didn't mention this, but it's in the presentation in case it comes up. This was a rendering that was presented at the community meeting, and it's also in the development order as architectural rendering that would basically be, the project would be required to be consistent with the town center guidelines, and this is designed to reflect those guidelines. So this is there in case it needs to be referenced. But back to my recommendations, staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the ordinance enacting a rezone from N1 industrial and A1 agriculture to planned development for 4.81 acres and approve the associated development order and master development plan located on Tuscaloosa Road, approximately 200 feet south of Michael Blake Boulevard. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this point? Doesn't look like it right now. Thank you so much. Is the applicant here, and do you wish to make a presentation? And just in case technology fails us, you've provided us hard copies, which we very much appreciate.
I did, Madam Chair, although they're in black and white. So blame the office for that, cutting down on office expenses. So good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners. My name is Brent Spain of Theriac and Spain, 1809 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida. And I appreciate the opportunity to be before you this afternoon. And I think it goes without saying, we appreciate staff's favorable recommendation and we support it fully. I will say that we've been in the pipeline for some time. You heard Mr. Robinson mention this project started in December of 2021. You know, on many issues, staff held our feet to the fire, and at the end of the day, it resulted in a much better project. I just want to walk through some slides. There's about 20 pages. Some of those we'll get through quickly, because Madam Chair read some stuff about what is and isn't competent substantial evidence. But that will get us through the first two. You all know, you heard that this is a quasi-judicial decision, and the initial burden is on myself and the applicant to demonstrate that we meet the county's published criteria. And one of those things we can rely on to meet that burden is the staff report, provided it's not conclusory. The staff report's in your packet. I think it goes without saying it's not conclusory. It's got backup and supporting documents for it. So we would submit on that basis we meet our initial burden. Once someone like myself meets our initial burden, it shifts to either the local government, if the staff were opposed to the project, or folks like the city of Winter Springs, who you'll hear from shortly, to demonstrate that in fact, not that they don't like the project or they think it's a bad project or there might be 8 other things they would like more than this, but that our project actually doesn't meet the county's published criteria. So not criteria folks wish were in your code or in your comp plan, but the criteria that are actually in your comp plan and land development code. Then just a few bullet points and background on lay folks if they talk. Madam Chair, you touched on this too. Generalized statements of opposition like, hey, just don't do this to me, this is terrible. This is going to ruin property values. That doesn't ring the bell for competent substantial evidence. They have to bring something more than that forward. And if it's an area that requires technical expertise, they need to present expert testimony. So some of this is going to look familiar because it was in the staff report, but on the screen on the left, you've got the aerial. You all are probably very familiar with where the site is. And then on the right, you've got the land use and the zoning maps. That's important, particularly the top map, because this entire site is industrial. I'm not standing before you this afternoon asking for the land use to change. And that will probably come up with some of the city's comments, given some of the submittals they've given you all. I received mine at about 4:51 p.m. last night. One of the things they like to point to a land use chart in the county's comp plan. That's one of their big issues is, oh, you can't do this. And there's a number of reasons why that logic's flawed. One of them is if when you look at that chart, it says proposed land use and adjacent land use. We're not proposing any change to this land use. In fact, we were first in time, first in right. We were industrial before anything around us got changed. In fact, everything around us had the exact same zoning and land use as my client's property. It was the city of Winter Springs that changed that surrounding land use. But again, we're going to touch upon that, I'm sure, several times today. But again, we have industrial land use. It's merely, as Mr. Robinson touched upon, it really comes down to the A1. We've got a very strange split zoning on a single parcel. The M1 allows us to do the proposed storage site as of right. The rear site doesn't on the A1. As you heard, initially the application was to go straight M1 zoning on the entire site. And then we were redirected to go the PD route in order to impose conditions on it. And you're going to see some of those in my slide presentation. So this is a zoom in on the master development plan, but I wanted to call out a few things because some things have been said about this master development plan. But first, in the yellow, what I've highlighted is up front, you've got an enhanced buffer that actually meets the city of Winter Springs roadway frontage requirements under their town center guidelines. In the middle of the site, there's actually a dashed line running north-south, and I've highlighted at the bottom to the left of that, when I'm looking at the diagram, that's where we're 35 feet and above. To the right of that line, that's 200 feet from our eastern property boundary. We're limited to 12 feet. So you may hear this afternoon some things about, well, they have A1, they should just keep A1 and do everything they can do on A1. I respectfully submit, and I've appeared before you all on behalf of neighbors, there's a laundry list of things in A1 that I would not want if I live in Tuscaloosa Crossings. But I will say we're reducing the height. The maximum height in A1 is 35 feet. We're bringing that down to 12 feet. 12 feet is lower than most folks' garage. It's much lower than height limitations or max height in Tuscaloosa Crossings. So I wanted to mention that. And then on the far right, you see some yellow, and that is highlighting that We have a 20-foot buffer on our eastern property line. We've got opacity requirements. Those are all enhanced. We have to plant it. And then outside our property, there's actually an open space in Tuscarora Crossings, which is a landscaped buffer of an additional 10 feet. So these, I actually zoomed in and cropped the master development plan. And one last thing on the master development plan, there's been this suggestion that somehow our MDP doesn't comply with your land development code because we don't actually lay out the buildings. Your land development code doesn't require that. You can actually do essentially what we've done is a bubble plan, but the details are in all these conditions, and that north-south line shows where, if an issue of scale and height arises, you know everything to the east of that line is 12 feet in height. Everything potentially to the west of it at a maximum could be 35 feet to the flat part of the roof. But some of these conditions that I've highlighted on the left, we're meeting the minimum open space requirements. We've got the building height that we've touched upon. We're capping it at 35 feet. 3 stories, and then we have 45 feet for architectural enhancements, which are specifically, essentially at the request of the city, because even though we're not subject to their town center guidelines, we're meeting those design guidelines. In fact, we went and we retained an architectural firm that has specifically designed projects in Winter Springs Town Center to redesign this when we change the elevations. So we're ringing all those bells on the height. In fact, I think in the T4, I think it's a minimum of 2 stories, maximum of 4 stories. Then you've got the proposed uses on the right slide. I'm just going to go down the ones I've highlighted. I think this is part of the public benefit that comes along with the PD. On the M1 zoning, you all know your land development code reaches back in the M1 zoning, so it sort of incorporates by reference all the zoning in M1A, and then M1A incorporates everything in C3, C2, and down the line. So by virtue of this PD, we're taking away all those M1 uses that folks might not prefer to see out on Tuscarora Road, and we're limiting the only use allowed on this site is the proposed self-storage facility with the ancillary office use, so retail use, which that retail use is capped at 1,000 square feet. You've got a straight-up prohibition in condition 2 that there's not going to be any industrial or manufacturing purposes used on the site. You have a condition 3, no individual bay or unit shall be used as a place of business. That was a concern that had been raised in comments that I'm not aware of any business that runs out of a mini storage, but we nipped it in the bud. We also have a condition that says you can't run plumbing to any of the units either. We have the hours of operation limitation, which I do think is critical because a lot of these mini storage facilities may be a 24-hour access, with a gate code that you go into. That's not how this facility's working. It's not a 24-hour access. Those are the hours, 7 to 9, 7 days a week. It does have a gated access. That's another condition that will be just past the office retail parking. Condition 9, no external bay doors may face east toward the existing residential development. So that was critical for staff's concern to address anybody in Tuscarora Crossings thinking, hey, we're going to see a storage bay door. That's not going to happen. One, the main building on Tuscarora Road, as you heard, has architectural windows or faux windows, so nothing we've all seen the projects when you drive down I-4 or the Turnpike. You may see a mini storage where you can see the roll-up bay windows, and sometimes there's a little cardboard person standing in the window. That is not authorized or allowed, is expressly prohibited by these conditions. And any of these storage units on the back portion of the property that are limited to 12 feet in height, those bay doors have to turn inward, so they're facing to the inside of the project. They're not visible outside. The same goes for any dumpster doors, mechanical equipment, fire protection that you heard staff talk about. That's a storage tank for water. All that will be screened, and that's an express condition on the master development plan as well as the DO. I already touched upon condition 12 is the gated access out front. Condition 13, we're going above and beyond on light spillage. You heard Mr. Robinson touch upon it's 0.5 foot candles. We're cutting that down to 0.25 foot candles off-site. And then condition 14, which we voluntarily agreed to, is no outdoor storage permitted, including automobiles, boats, RVs, and then also no renting of moving equipment. So this isn't a storage facility where you're going to have a litany of U-Haul trucks out front or sitting there all week long. It's expressly prohibited. So Mr. Robinson showed this architectural rendering. We've also attached this to the DO. So when we come forward with the final development plan and site plan and try to pull building permits, we have to substantially comply with the renderings. And this was one of the renderings. We showed this during the public hearing or community meetings. And you'll see this is looking at Tuscaloosa Road. That's the entrance that lines up with the Avery Park entrance across the way. We've got the faux storefront there positioned on the corner. You'll see the building articulation and modulation. So we're going up and down and we're going in and out on the building. We've got multiple materials, which the DO also has an express condition limiting the type of materials that we can use on the building. We've got multiple earth tones incorporated as well into that design. We also have more detailed elevations that, again, are also attached to the DO, so our feet are held to the fire on these for substantial compliance. But again, just to go from top to bottom, the top is what would be facing east. So that's what would be facing across the rear part of our property all the way toward Tuscaloosa Crossings. The middle two photos are essentially the end caps, so north and south. And then the bottom elevation is what's bordering Tuscaloosa Road. And again, you can see the articulation, the roof lines. And then one of the elevations that's on the DO is a top-down view. I didn't include it this afternoon, but that shows that we're actually modulating the building in and out. This is the elevations on the rear side of the building. So you'll see the bottom. That's an example of bay doors, but those are all, and this again is attached to the DO, those are all facing internal to the project. That building's limited to 12 feet in height. This is another image we did for the community meeting. This is looking from the rear on Strong Tree Way that's in Tuscaloosa Crossings. This is looking west back into the property. So looking across their 10-foot landscaped easement into our 20-foot easement and buffer. A buffer that's there. So essentially, folks would have to be looking through this in hopes of seeing a 12-foot tall building, which I would submit is not going to occur. So we've heard a lot about Winter Springs Town Center, which obviously we're not in the town center. We're not governed by the town center regulations, but we've gone above and beyond to check those boxes. But what is in the town center? Here is a couple pictures of projects. You see the Crunch Fitness project. You see the Aldi. You see the Dollar Tree. I believe the architectural firm we retained for our project was involved in some of these projects. And then you see the Savoy down in the bottom right, which I'm going to have a couple more images of. You can see that's a four-story structure. That's immediately to the east of Tuscaloosa Crossings. But again, all these projects and elevations you'll see are building articulation, modulation, earth tones. We would submit our rendering is no different than these. This is a project, this is the Ace Hardware. This is immediately north of our site at Tuscaloosa Road and Michael Blake Boulevard. It's on about 3.5 acres. It's in the T5 transect of the town center. And the reason this became relevant at the P&Z hearing is the Winter Springs City Commission just reviewed this for an aesthetic review. They haven't approved a site plan yet, but the applicant came in. That's one of the processes Winter Springs has. And this got unanimously approved on April 24th. This year, and the fifth bubble down, you see the staff report. This was one of the things I pulled from the staff report. The staff report's actually in your agenda packet because we submitted it at the P&Z. Is, quote, "The proposed design is harmonious with the color scheme, materials, and character of the Winter Springs Marketplace, the town center, and other nearby commercial properties in the town center district." You look at this site, this is the front elevation there. You can see there's I call it outdoor storage. I think the materials you got late yesterday, I tried to claim that it's a garden center. Either way, we don't have outdoor storage on our proposal, but you can see that building facade, the length of that's about a little bit over 170 feet. That's only slightly shorter than our proposed building elevation. And again, this is just north of our site. This is an area where I want to bring in the Savoy. There were some comments made at the P&Z hearing that our building, other than the high school, would be the largest building in the city of Winter Springs, which again, we're not in the city of Winter Springs. We're also not the largest building in the city of Winter Springs, nor are we the largest building that will be next to Tuscaloosa Crossings. You can see our site's called out with the blue line and the square box in the middle. Immediately to our right is Tuscaloosa Crossings, that portion of the development. Those are 34-foot wide lots. And you can see those homes have a rear entry. So the garage on those homes are actually facing our client's property. It's not the front of the house looking toward our client's property. And then a little to the northeast, you'll see the Savoy building there. That is a 4-story building. As we saw, it's 140,000 square feet. It's 145 senior apartments. So again, by comparison, our proposed PD within 200 feet of Tuscaloosa Crossings is limited to 12 feet in height, and we're capped at 35 feet, 3 stories. And the max floor area ratio, and you all know this, I can put it on the master development plan. I take your little number, 0.65, I times it by the acreage, and it tells me this is the maximum square footage you can do on the site, across the entire site. That doesn't mean once we get everything engineered and stormwater ponds and everything else that we're actually going to get to 107,000 square feet. But assuming we did, the misnomer that we're the largest building anywhere in Winter Springs is just false. There's also, I believe it's called the Rise apartment complex, which is right next to City Hall, which is about 340,000 square feet. I believe it's also 4 stories as well. So here's another picture of the Savoy. You can see the Tuscaloosa Crossings right in the background of that. Again, I would submit if that rendering and that elevation and modulation in our architectural style complies with the town center, certainly our building that's smaller is not somehow miraculously incompatible with Tuscaloosa Crossings. They have a larger building right on the backside of them. And again, that just loops us back to our rendering. So if we just flip back and forth, I'm not sure how our building, which again, I think this picture reminded me, is although we're 3 stories maximum, our building elevation is designed to present as 2 stories. So, which is important. And the Ace Hardware did the exact same thing. They're actually a single story, but they designed it to present as a 2-story building. So compatibility, because you're probably going to hear a lot about this this afternoon, and I've listed some key things we've done, but we submit we've achieved this. And compatibility, as you know, is defined by statute. It doesn't mean that you can't have any effect on the adjoining use. It simply means that 2 uses can coexist over time without unduly negatively affecting each other. And we submit that we've achieved that by doing numerous things. We have enhanced buffers, we've enhanced the opacity, the general placement of the stormwater pond on the site. We're limiting the project uses. We're also ratcheting back the uses not only in the M1, but on the A1 property. We're reducing the height on the A1 property. We've got an enhanced architectural design. We've imposed limitations on the visibility of bay doors, mechanical equipment. We front on a 4-lane arterial road. And then when you look at the surrounding development to the north, that's an undeveloped parcel. It can have up to 35,000 square feet of commercial. To the east, we've got Tuscaloosa Crossings, which you saw on the aerial. Those are 34-foot lots. They're across. They have a 10-foot buffer. We have a 20-foot buffer. And they also have the Savoy right next to them on the northeast side. On the south, we have a future development tract, buffer, and wetland. We also have wetlands on our property that have to be preserved. And then west, across Tuscarora Road, you have Avery Park, which that development, that portion of it has 45-foot wide lots. There are also some residential lots, as Mr. Robinson touched upon, in Seminole County, which is a MDR future land use. Again, most of these I've touched upon, the building height limitations, the restrictions on uses, the time. It's a very low trip generation use, which came up at the P&Z and also at the community meeting, is folks at the community meeting said, well, why don't you put something there we really like, restaurants, retail, this and that, while at the same time telling us, how dare you put the self-storage facility there because school children use that sidewalk, which we will also install the sidewalk across our parcel to get to school. All those uses have a much higher trip generation, and in fact, they have peaks throughout the day, where our trip generation's a very low trip generator. We have restrictions on signage, access control, the light spillover, and I've already touched upon the building elevation. So that brings us to what has the city said previously when they annexed in property right next to us. And the staff packets are in your agenda backup materials, but you had Avery Park in 2001. They changed from County A1 to Winter Springs Town Center. And on page 4 of the staff report, the staff recognized the future land use to the east was industrial and zoning was M1 and A1. So that's our client's property. On pages 10 and 11 of that staff report, and this is the city staff stated, quote, the proposed rezoning of the property from County A1 agriculture to City TC Town Center zoning district is compatible with the existing land use of adjacent properties. So you have this statement in 2001 when they're acknowledging there's industrial property across the street that, hey, us downzoning this in a way to TC or upzoning it, however you want to look at it, but changing it to residential, that's compatible with what can go on across the street. Now, I'm aware they submitted something to you yesterday afternoon that tried to say, oh, well, no, we were saying it was compatible with the vacant property. Well, I'm not sure in 2001 that the meatpacking plant was vacant at that time. It was industrial. It wasn't limited just to a meatpacking plant. It could have come in and done a storage facility in 2001 as of right. That brings us to Tuscarora Crossings, which is even more recent. That's 2014. You had a flume amendment from County Industrial to Winter Springs Town Center and a rezoning from County A1 and M1 to Winter Springs Town Center. So again, if you look at the actual staff report, page 4 of the staff report states that, quote, the proposed use and density is compatible with the surrounding area. And then you go to pages 10 and 11 of the staff report where the staff stated, quote, surrounding properties in Seminole County have future land use designations of industrial and medium-density residential. And then they have another finding where part of their findings for rezonings are that you won't have a detrimental impact on the surrounding folks, is, quote, the intent in the zoning of the property is to apply a zoning classification for the subject property that is consistent and compatible with the surrounding land uses. Well, one of those surrounding land uses is our client's property, which was industrial. So the city may tell you a different tale today, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. If it was good to annex the property and change the zoning to town center and say, hey, this is compatible, because this is one of the findings we have to make, is compatible with the industrial future land use next door. But then we're going to stand before Seminole County in 2023 and say, no, letting a landowner do something on the industrial property is not compatible. And in fact, I'd submit we're doing much less than what we could. And I know they've shifted their argument some, and they're focused a little more on the A1 property, but we're even ratcheting that back, where this, from a planning land use perspective, is an improvement for the surrounding neighborhood. A couple final slides. One, you may have heard this statute or seen it referenced. This was brought up at the P&Z meeting. The mayor of Winter Springs suggested that somehow our client is bound by this statute. This section is part of the Annexation Act in the Florida statutes. I've quoted the key language. That little bullet 2 and A and B are exact quotes, and 3 from the statute. But essentially, this allows a municipality to annex an enclave because they've indicated they believe our client's property is an enclave. But you'll see it says a municipality may, it doesn't say shall, must. It says may, and then there's A, annex an enclave by interlocal agreement. There is no interlocal agreement for the annexation of this property. They've now, in that binder that might be in front of Commissioner Constantine still, have referenced a very old agreement, but that agreement does not specifically dictate that this parcel be annexed. In fact, all it says in that agreement was, hey, you agree to provide services in this area, and in exchange, the county's not going to object to any annexations. And, by the way, we'll encourage people to annex. Nothing in there says you have to annex. There was no agreement to annex this. So that gets you to B, they can annex an enclave by municipal ordinance when the annexation's approved in a referendum. There's been no referendum. And again, we've been in this pipeline since December 2021. And then finally, which this is what's mentioned in the staff report, it states, this section does not apply to undeveloped or unimproved real property. Well, this property is vacant. It's not developed presently, so the statute is completely irrelevant. And then lastly, there was also a question about utilities, whether they're available or not available. And a statute was referenced. This was a statute that our client had actually referenced as well in some submittals to the county. And it's in section 381.00651B. And I've quoted the statute, but the key language is availability. So what is available? And you'll see the definition of availability. And there aren't water and sewer lines available under that definition. Above and beyond that, the applicant sent a letter to the city of Winter Springs requesting water and sewer. The city did not respond to that in writing. There was a meeting last July of 2022, and the city manager during that meeting told Mr. Axel that the city would not be providing any water and sewer to this project based on the proposed use. And then the last bullet, as indicated in the staff report, quote, it's been determined that sewer is not available to the site, end quote. And, quote, environmental services has determined that a connection to central water is not required based on the specific use. The self-storage does not utilize or generate more than 1,000 gallons per day of storage or of waste. There's only a little office with a tiny bathroom. So by state law, we can go for the well and septic. So with that, we would support the staff's detailed findings. We respectfully request approval of the proposed rezoning in PD. Again, we submit it's consistent with the governing documents that guide your decision this afternoon, and those are the county's comp plan and the county's land development code. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I would, Madam Chair, respectfully ask for some rebuttal time.
Absolutely. Before we go to questions, I noticed a few additional people came into the room. The yellow forms out in the lobby, we need to have you fill out and submit to Ms. Beach in the front if you intend to speak. If you would like your input just submitted for the record, you can fill out a green form, but we need to have those completed and given to Ms. Beach now. So we can determine our times that we have to for public comment later this afternoon. Questions for Mr. Spain? I think we'll reserve the right to call you back later.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Ms. Beach, do we have people who would like to speak on this item?
We do.
All right.
So we have Nick Talfsky, followed by Anthony. Last name begins with a G.
Okay.
Garganese.
Okay.
Yep, that sounds
Art.
right.
My name's Anthony Garganese. Oh, you don't mind, I will go first, and then the Skowalski will follow. Don't mind.
Sure, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Chair, I would ask for 6 minutes. I'm the city attorney for the city of Winter Springs, here representing the city of Winter Springs.
Are you speaking on behalf of everyone in Winter
I'm
Springs?
speaking on behalf of the city commission of Winter Springs.
So
yes.
city commissioners and the mayor will not be speaking today?
They
Because
may
if-
in their individual capacity.
Then
but-
you'll have 3 minutes. The 6 minutes is because you are speaking on their behalf and in place of them. That is our operating procedure here.
I respect that, Madam Chairman.
Commission waive our right to speak, so the city attorney may speak.
There you go.
All right, you have 6
Is that
minutes,
fine?
Mr. Garganese.
Okay. Of course, we have a copy for the clerk. Procedurally, we just wanted to present it here in person. That's the binder that we sent you yesterday, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. I'll try to get through these rather quickly in my 6 minutes. Okay, rarely do I appear before the county commission. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your service. It's a difficult task, no doubt, and certainly appreciate it. I won't cover everything that's in the binder, but let me just briefly cover the slides. The first slide, the city's position is that the focus of this rezoning really needs to be looking at, you need to be looking at the A1 property. The proposed rezoning materially alters the uses and intensities of development on the A1 property. Over half the property is A1 property. A1 is currently consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. A1 zoning does not currently allow self-storage facilities as a permitted use. So this proposed zoning is solely for the purposes of increasing the land available for self-storage. The proposed rezoning materially alters the uses and intensities of development permitted on the A1 property. We recognize the M1 zoning property along Tuscaloosa, but the A1 is a different situation. Whoop, I don't want to show you that, but that's coming. All right, hold on a second. Very sensitive. The county commission has significant discretion to deny this PD zoning, the self-storage application. Your own comprehensive plan, FLU 2.9, specifically states that the Board of County Commissioners shall have discretion as to the uses and structures approved with a PD classification, as well as other features of the PD and the plan as a whole. The commission needs to evaluate compatibility of the proposed use and structures with the surrounding neighborhoods and uses. That's in the county's comprehensive plan. The applicant has no private property right to discretionary zoning change, increasing the intensity of potential development. Your own comprehensive plan recognizes what's consistent with state law, that a property owner is not entitled to all zoning classifications or the most potentially dense or intense zoning classification. I'm sorry, but this thing is super sensitive. The master development plan, in our opinion, is incomplete. How can the county commission make a determination of compatibility that's required in your comprehensive plan without having adequate information from the applicant? This plan doesn't propose the building footprint and the building size, the building scale, and the placement. The plan doesn't even provide an open space calculation, which is required by your code. City staff put together an honest rendition just to give you an scaled honest rendition of the proposed scale of this development project. While they like to show the picture of along State before Tuscaloosa Road, I mean, in the back on the A1 property, they're proposing long linear warehouse buildings adjacent to a low-density single-family residential area. This proposal is proposing the maximum size and scale under the county's comprehensive plan, 107,000 square feet of warehouse, a maximum floor area ratio of 0.65, and minimum open space. I hate to hit this clean. Importantly, the county's comprehensive plan incorporates the Regional Growth Compact from approximately 2006, 2008. There is an abundance of policies in your comprehensive plan about the Regional Growth Compact. And primarily, it's to protect residential neighborhoods. The county shall ensure long-term viability of residential neighborhoods and foster distinct, attractive, and safe places to live. Ensure compatibility with surrounding land uses. The Winter Springs Town Center is the epitome of a unique, distinct, attractive place to live. The surrounding existing low-density detached single-family homes, and there's a map in your binder. They're low-density single-family residential areas, less than 3 dwelling units per acre. And the property across the street that's still in unincorporated Seminole County, there are about 9 single-family homes, and all of those properties are on property over an acre of land. This proposed development is incompatible with the local development trends within the town center of a mix of residential, light and neighborhood commercial, and office uses. So while they may say the governing documents are not the town center code, the town center district code, because this property is an enclave in the middle of the town center, is dictating the development trends in the surrounding area. To determine compatibility with this project, you need to consider the fact that it's within the middle of the town center. Self-storage facilities are an incompatible land use, just by nature. We had Dover Cole Partners, who's the original author of the Winter Springs Town Center Code, give an opinion. They recommend denial. The town center depends on both cumulative effect of the land uses and the physical design of each parcel. Land use of self-storage by its nature this land use by its self-storage by its nature is not compatible with a well-functioning town center. The physical design featuring largely windowless buildings without habitable spaces doesn't contribute to the feeling of safety and walkability for pedestrians and those gathering in the town center. Self-storage does not constitute or contribute to and undermines the purpose of the town center in general, which is intended to encourage activity, shopping, dining, and gathering and socializing. I will leave you with this in my brief 6 minutes. The last slide, if I can get it. The case of the elephant in a Volkswagen. The Dade County versus Section 11 case. The applicant sought a permit for a mini storage facility in mostly residential area. They proposed a large 2-story building, 6 linear warehouse buildings. P&Z recommended approval. County staff recommended approval. However, the county commission denied the request. The applicant appealed. The trial court reversed the county commission. They went up on appeal. The appellate court upheld the county's decision.
Mr. Garganese, I'm giving you a lot of latitude.
5 seconds. The county commission examined issues of compatibility and properly considered aesthetics. They considered the testimony of neighbors that characterized the project as industrial and an eyesore, incompatible with surrounding neighborhood. One neighbor commented, "It's almost like trying to put an elephant in a Volkswagen. You still know the elephant is there." And I respectfully request that you don't allow this elephant to reside in the Winter Springs Town Center.
We'll go back
Madam
and talk
Chairman,
about
thank you
competent,
very
substantial
much.
evidence. Thank you so much.
Well,
Who's our next
Thank you.
speaker?
Next, we have Katrina Shaddix, followed by Dexter Glasgow.
All right. And Mr. Lasco, I'm not sure where you are in the, okay, you're right there. Who's after Mr. Lasco, Ms. Beach?
Art Gallo.
Okay. Mr. Gallo, depending on where you are in the room, if you want to make your way over to this side, then you can be ready to speak. Ms. Shaddix?
Hi there. Katrina Shaddix, Executive Director, Bear Warriors United, 1011 Seneca Oak Trail, Geneva, Florida, 32732. Rezoning ag lands for impervious surfaces, rooftops, and roads has proven in the past and currently to be catastrophic to our quality of life, our physical and mental well-being, as well as to our wildlife habitats and corridors, with destructive fragmentation and deforestation, as well as being catastrophic for our imperiled and protective species, with loss of habitat and increased roadkills. This rezone and destruction of ag land are not compatible with government's clean water laws and with water quality initiatives. When a developer asks the county commission to rezone, he is asking for the local government to change the law specifically for him and his financial benefit by adopting an ordinance. Developers are not entitled to rezones. Rezones are a gift to developers from city and county commissions. If I'm not mistaken, Winter Springs has talked about a building moratorium, and the public wants that. And is a building moratorium of development and rezoning unconstitutional? No. And that's referenced in U.S. Supreme Court opinion regarding the Tahoe Sierra Preservation Council versus Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And under the Byrd-Harris Act, a 1-year moratorium is permissible. So in conclusion, land use is water quality. Regulating land use for the express purpose of protection of water quality is a constitutionally protected legitimate government purpose. It's not too late to learn a lesson from past rezone transgressions that destroyed our water quality, created flooding, choked aquifer recharge capabilities, killed native wildlife, and further fragmented wildlife habitats and corridors. The job of the county commission is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the county. This rezone request will not do that. And if you looked at the map, there are crested caracaras that frequent that property. They're protected by the Endangered Species Act. Also, there is a family of bears that find shelter in that patch of woods. So to destroy that is going to further fragment the habitat that is desperately needed in that area, and it's going to push all of the wildlife that is currently living on that property into the front yards of our residents, and nobody wants venomous snakes or bears in their front yard. Well, I want bears in my front yard, but most people don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dexter Glasgow, followed by Art Gallo, and then our last speaker is David Plummer.
I am so sorry. When I said your name earlier, I heard Lasco, like Ted Lasko, and that is not your name. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Dexter Glasgow. I live at 1358 Brave Wolf Point, Winter Springs, Florida. I'm going to provide some context. I won't be as apt as Mr. Spain as a layperson, but hopefully the context I can provide gives some color to the situation. I've listened to several members of the board in your elections talk about your passion for Seminole County now and in the future, so I'm hoping your decision will take into account what the residents, the members of the community are hoping to come out of this. All right. For instance, Strong Tree Way, it doesn't just back up to this wildlife area. It's an area where the families that live there, our kids bike there, they roller skate there. It's a meeting area, right? Mr. Spain mentioned that it's the back of these homes. Well, some of them have balconies. They're bedroom windows that look out there. So it's a quality of life issue. Above and beyond that, if we want to stick to the facts, that it is a wildlife area. I know about these bears. They cut through my front yard. Is it something I love? No, but it comes with living in an area that is still partially wild, right? It's something that we moved to Seminole County for. Putting in a self-storage area does not in any way benefit the community. Mr. Spain mentioned there's an assisted living community there. In my heart, having senior members of our community is beneficial, right? They become part of the community. So the building may be bigger, it may be an eyesore in some people's opinion, but it does add benefit to the community overall. I don't see how the self-storage facility is going to add benefit to the community overall. All right. I have a couple simple little requests. In the P&Z, there was some animosity between the members of that board and the city of Winter Springs. I don't know where that comes from. It's not my issue. All I'm asking is that you take into effect how it's going to affect the members of the community, right? Simply, please just deny the rezone. All right. Keep in mind that we in this community are the registered voters. We will have long memories. All right. The planned moratorium on building and all that is simply to curtail some of the things that Mr. Spain did mention. Some of the buildings that have gone up, we haven't been happy with. And the way that this has all been handled by our representatives, I don't think that it's necessarily the way it should have been done. But I'm appealing to you. Please make the correct decision today for the members of the community. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Art Gallo, followed by David Plummer.
And Ms. Beach, how many speakers do we have?
That's it. For this item, we just have two more.
Okay.
Afternoon, Art Gallo, 199 Nandina Terrace in Winter Springs. I fully appreciate the difficult job that Board of County Commissioners has, as well as the county staff, to run the county. So I regret what I'm about to say is not going to make your job any easier. I attended the 3 May Planning and Zoning meeting, and what happened there is relevant to the discussion that you are being asked to rule on today. Things were going pretty good at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting till after the public input and the board had to talk about the application that was in front of them. One of the board members said, I live in Winter Springs. I'm even a builder, and I would never build in Winter Springs. That was a comment I thought went over the line. And the chair neglected to say anything. We could have ended this right then. And the gentleman went on later, and he said, and I quote, and this is all public record, it's in YouTube, "The Winter Springs Commission has always been dictatorial, obstructionist, and arrogant." Now, I'm thinking to myself, what in the world is relevant about that comment? Why would anyone ever make it? So we had two failures here, one of an inappropriate action twice, and one of an inaction that really the chair could have cut this at the knees, and I wouldn't be standing here today. And I'm not enjoying this, believe me. The comments were opinions, they were rude, unprofessional, and not even relevant. Worse, it appears to me at least that the County Planning and Zoning Board is biased against the city of Winter Springs. At least one of its members' comments demonstrated that they were. So I'm no longer sure how the current P&Z board can continue to fairly decide any case that comes before them that involves the city of Winter Springs. This isn't good. The comments had they had to influence other members of the P&Z. Maybe their decision. And this is now what's before you today. So here we are. We're stuck between the proverbial rock and a hard place. And you have to deal with, in my opinion, two issues here. One, how will the BCC address the bias problem on the current Planning and Zoning Board? And two, specifically for today, how will the BCC address the decision that came out of its biased Planning and Zoning Board on the 3rd of May? Again, I'm not enjoying this. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Final speaker for this item is David Plummer.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm David Plummer. I reside at 1514 Eagle Wind Terrace in Winter Springs in Tuscarora Crossings. And I'm here. I was also at the Planning Commission meeting earlier this month. And I guess I'm here to address three things. One, in addition to the profound size of this facility and the logistics, namely the water issues and sewage issues, I'm concerned about the welfare of the neighborhood's children coming from school. There's 2 schools within a couple thousand feet of this property. It's been brought up, it's also brought up that the storage facilities tend to have a checkered past when it comes to, or checkered history, when it comes to various illegal activities going on at storage facilities. In addition to that, just as the last gentleman brought up, I'll share with you that I have lived in 11 states. I'm an Army veteran. I've traveled around quite a bit. I've seen a lot of boards in actions, a number of councils in actions, and I was astonished at the Planning Commission, where I saw at least 3 handfuls of witnesses speak against, for various reasons, speak against this particular facility and its construction, the rezoning of this for the accommodation of this facility. And I saw 0 witnesses that were uncompensated who were behind the developer's proposals, yet the council had very little deliberations, a few snarky remarks that we just heard, and in a 5-to-1 vote, it was decided in favor of the developer without a single person in the community saying, this is a great facility to have, this is great for our kids, great for our neighborhood, great for our community. It didn't happen. I urge you to vote this down, to turn this proposal down. Certainly, there's other sorts of businesses that would be safer for our neighborhoods, safer for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I will just say, I think there is a bit of a misnomer, and I will share this from the perspective of some conversations that I had with elected officials in the city of Winter Springs, that somehow the decisions that our boards make are to be dictated by how many people show up at a board meeting and what they say. In fact, one of them said to me, hey, listen, we're going to help you out with this. We're going to make sure we get a lot of people to turn out and speak against this, so it'll make it easier for you to vote against it. And that's not the responsibility before this board or any elected body. I will also say that telling me that you might not vote for me in the future is also not something I will take into consideration with my vote, because I have to base my vote on the competent, substantial evidence that's presented to me. So certainly want to hear from the public, certainly want to hear from the applicant, but we have a process and we have a code, and that's what I look at when I base my decisions. I don't know if the county attorney has anything he would like to weigh in on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've covered a lot of the comments I wanted to address, but also I would just like to also state and remind this board and the public that this is a de novo hearing, that you are not bound by the P&Z recommendation, and it is just that, a recommendation to you.
Thank you.
So you're to determine your conclusion and your vote today based on the evidence presented at today's hearing.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to address any of the comments that came up during public hearing? We're done. Are there any other? No more speaker forms? Okay. The green forms that were submitted, would you please pass those so that we can read those, and then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Brent Spain, Theriac and Spain, 1809 Edgewater Drive, Orlando. And I'll keep it brief here on rebuttals. One, I would just submit, I think through our PowerPoint presentation, we've demonstrated, we've tried to go above and beyond to ensure there's not an issue with compatibility. Now, there might be some other applicants, in fact, some of my own clients may have given me pushback. This client's been very amenable when it got to this point in the process to do those things. So I think those type of applicants and developers should be applauded at the end of the day. Tying into the city attorney's comments, I would respectfully just submit that saying something is not compatible because it's not compatible doesn't make it so. And that is certainly not competent, substantial evidence under any legal standard. The rendering that the city showed, that also got in the newspaper, caused our clients a lot of grief because we had to correct the newspaper because it had indicated that it was the developer's rendering. Respectfully, that's not our client's rendering. It looks nothing like what our client intends to do. And I would submit it's not even to scale. It's done to sort of shock and awe folks. I mean, heck, I even look at it and think, man, that looks humongous. But that was the point of that rendering. On development trends, I just say you can look at the Savoy in that area. You can look at the Ace Hardware that was just a few weeks ago. The city's own code requires 2 stories at a minimum, 4 stories at a maximum. Again, we are being very sensitive to Tuscarora crossings. We've got 12 feet within 200 feet of that property line. The suggestion that somehow the town center supports some development trend of low-density residential development, again, is just a misnomer. In fact, all you have to do is look to the city's own comprehensive plan. There's policy 2.28 of the future land use element says, encourage higher intensity development in the town center, subject to the town center district code. In fact, it used to be 36 dwelling units per acre and 1.0 FAR. They deleted that. So there's actually no maximum density in their town center, and there is no maximum FAR. You come in and seek the approval. If it's over 20,000 square feet, you seek a conditional use. Mr. Gallo brought up a point about children playing on Strong Tree Way. I just want to make it clear on the record, we have no access to Strong Tree Way. We have no access into those residential communities. Our sole access is out on the Tuscarora Road, an arterial roadway. And then lastly, Madam Chair, you sort of stole my thunder. It was my last little circle thing, and Mr. Chupak touched upon it, but, and again, I represent neighbors. I I come before you, and I come before you knowing what the standard is. And I try to do my best to ring the bell and give you all a hook. But again, dovetailing back to my early slides, my obligation is to demonstrate through CSE that we meet your published criteria. Then the burden shifts. Conjecture, speculation, surmise is not competent substantial evidence to deny my client's project. They might not like it. Heck, even one of you might not like it and think, gosh, if only they had done X, Y, and Z. But that's not the standard. The standard, again, is whether we've met the published criteria, and you haven't heard one individual I submit stand before you this afternoon and say, Mr. Spain's project does not meet policy blank, section blank. And so again, based on your staff's detailed findings, we would respectfully ask for approval of the proposed PD, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Spain? Mrs. Herr?
I just have, well, I have a couple of questions. So I think the objectionable rendering would be this, Mr. Spain?
Yes, that is not our client's rendering.
Understood. Do you have one from this aspect that you would be willing to share? Because that's not in this package.
We were asked to do renderings. We did that. The rendering in your left hand is one that we showed at the community meeting. We also did all the building elevations.
Right, so that's a no?
Yeah, I don't have one that looks like it's from a drone looking across the street. No, ma'am.
Okay. And so by your comments, this is just, the perspective creates it a dynamic where it's out of scale. I mean, it does look huge, and you're saying that that's not what this is going to come out to be.
Yeah, I would submit that that diagram is not to scale. In fact, they even have another one from the other angle that they've shown where something 12 feet high looks as tall as the 35-foot buildings in their neighborhood. And they're further away. That is not done to scale. And nobody has attested to you this afternoon that that drawing is to scale.
And then the buffers on here would not be representative of the buffers that you've offered up either, because that's
No.
certainly not a 30-foot buffer.
No, it doesn't show our retention area on there. It doesn't show the wetland preserve.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. My next question relates to the portion of the parcel that's currently agricultural. That is not entitled to this use. I'm asking the question.
Yeah, that would be correct. Under
So-
A1, a storage facility is not allowed on A1 as of right.
So does this project fall absolutely out of probably the economics of the project if you only did it on the half of the property? Because it was, I don't know that it's half of the property, but on the
Yeah.
portion of the property that it does fall?
Yeah, I mean, my client would be looking at that property that was advertised as, it's got industrial land use on it, but for the fact of being able to develop it. And that's sort of been a shift in the storyline from the city that I saw in the binder last night for the first time was, oh, no, we don't have any problem on the front. Let them do it all in the front. And they've taken this new approach to try to kill us on the back. But again, my client wouldn't be investing the time and money in a year and a half, 2 years into this if that's what they got at the end of the day.
For a portion of the property. And have you attempted to have this property annexed into Winter Springs?
Mr. Axel met early on. The city provided us a annexation development agreement the day of our community meeting, which is also in your agenda packet, to essentially say, hey, look, we now will take you in. You just need to sign this document. Look at all these carrots we've given you, which they gave carrots that I don't think they offer to other folks. We'll waive this, we'll waive that, we'll waive this. Oh, one little small thing. You won't be able to do what you've spent the last 2 years trying to do. And I would respectfully submit we're not obligated to agree to a unilateral agreement. But that's the background on that, is that annexation agreement was presented on March 14th.
But was it denied earlier than that? So there wasn't a willingness to work to?
Yes, earlier than that, we were told that they would not, in July of 2022, there was an in-person meeting with the city manager, and Mr. Axel was informed that the city will not provide water and sewer for this proposed project. Which really, at the end of the day, if you cut to the chase, this is really just about the use. Nobody's complaining about the architectural renderings and everything else. I think we demonstrate that we check all their boxes. It's simply that, oh, Mr. Spain's client is putting a mini storage end user in there. If I had just that big a building, but it was a Dave & Buster's, no one would be here.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Spain? No? Thank you. If there are,
Madam Chair?
yes.
Ms. Spain, can you talk about, there was some conversations about safety and about the issue of crime when it comes to self-storage. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing on that. I had alluded to that, I've never heard that. It suggested that people are running businesses out of a mini storage facility, but we've gone above and beyond and conditioned our use to say you can't do that, and we're not running plumbing to any units. I would respectfully submit me coming up to the podium and saying, Commissioner DeLaurie, this use is going to create crime. That's not competent substantial evidence. If somebody came to you with statistical studies that said, hey, in Seminole County, we have a real big problem with, this type of use, that's different. But you didn't hear any of that this evening.
I understand that,
this
but I'm
afternoon.
trying to get it from you.
Yeah, from me, I would sit there and say my client has done what you would hope they would do. One, it's not a 24-hour access facility, so you don't have people coming in the wee hours of the night, coming in and punching their little code, and maybe there's one person on shift then, or they're just getting caught on the cameras. So that's one. You've got controlled access to the facility. The entire facility will be fenced. So you've got the fence and the gate on it. So I think in the hours of operation, again, the 7 to 9 are, I think, help eliminate that concern that somebody's going to be doing something unsavory, because there's always going to be employees on site.
Thank you, Mr. Spain.
Yep.
All right, before we let Mr. Spain sit down, anything else? And we might call you back up again.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Constantine?
Yes. I don't have a question of staff for Mr. Spain. I have a question for the city attorney. I've received, in doing investigation of this, contradicting information about what the question was that Commissioner Herr and others have asked about the annexation. I mean, quite frankly, this piece of property is surrounded by the city, and I don't understand for the life of me why this wasn't a long time ago annexed into the city. And I'd like to know what's going on, because I've heard one thing from one person, another thing from someone else. You have to repeat your name and address.
Yes, Anthony Garganese, City Attorney, Winter Springs. Regarding annexation, as was noted, a pre-annexation agreement was recently submitted to the applicant, requesting that they agree to annex.
Okay, that was in March. I'm not
Right.
trying to interrupt
Yeah.
you, sir. That was in March of '23. We've heard the details of that. I'm talking about, in the past. I mean, this has been going on since '21.
Right. Previously, the City Commission had an opportunity to consider an adult living facility. We had the commission, it's in the package in your binder. A non-binding presentation was submitted to the City Commission. The City Commission looked upon the adult living facility proposal favorably. A draft pre-annexation agreement was prepared for that proposed developer. And for whatever reason, the developer decided not to pursue the project. So there was an opportunity there. It just didn't come to fruition. Normally, in the town center, as you know, with all of our enclaves, the annexations present themselves as developers come in to develop their property. They enter into a voluntary annexation, and that opportunity hasn't presented itself for this particular property.
Follow-up. I know a little bit about annexation law.
I'm sure you do,
I'm just,
Commissioner.
what I'm asking you is, though, the city has the opportunity to annex it at any time. You know, it doesn't have to be voluntary. It could have annexed. You could have come in with a JPA with the county. There's a lot of ways you could have annexed this property before this has come to a head. And I'm asking you, was there a reason that it wasn't done, other than it just wasn't done?
It wasn't done because we haven't had the vehicle to annex the property. The city of Winter Springs proposed an interlocal service boundary agreement years ago to try to negotiate the annexation of the enclaves. An agreement was not reached. So the city commission remains interested in annexing all enclaves.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question for staff now, if I can.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Garganese.
Thank you, sir.
Stay close, just in case someone else has a
Yeah.
question.
So, Rebecca, did I not, in all of this information that I'm getting today, tomorrow, yesterday, 2 years ago, on this, did I not hear about, we tried to work with the city on a JPA?
That's correct.
Joint planning agreement, for what JPA means for those
Yes.
things.
So, and I believe Mr. Garganese may be referring to a different agreement, an interlocal service agreement that might have to do with the utilities. But we did approach the city back in 2020 about entering into a joint planning area agreement. At the time, the city was not interested. They have, in late last year, said that they are interested again in entering into a JPA. So at the time, I responded back and said, okay, let's set up a meeting. And then I think it's at the time that the hurricanes had hit, and then no further conversation happened after that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Zembauer.
Madam Chair, of course, this is my district, and I would ask my fellow commissioners for a great deal of latitude. I'll try to be as brief as I can in this matter. This is very unfortunate that we've arrived here today. Very unfortunate for any number of reasons. And we have a decision before us to make that, quite frankly, is a tough decision to make. We want to be good neighbors with our cities. We want to work with our fellow elected officials. We want to do what's right by the citizens. But I would be remiss if I didn't cover some ground to help put this into context. As was just spoke about, I have an email, which I will enter into the record and give to the clerk, that was back when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I saw what was happening around the fringes of some of our unincorporated areas up against our city areas, and I pushed for a joint planning agreement to be considered for the city of Oviedo and the city of Winter Springs, because I knew what the future would hold. When I became a commissioner and Commissioner Lockhart came aboard at the same time in 2018, collectively, we were very vocal about a joint planning agreement so that we could not have these close boundary squabbles. And staff endeavored to do so. As a board, we gave that charge to our staff to go out and start some dialogue with both of these cities to ensure that, you know, this kind of issue wouldn't exist. Another reason that this came to mind back many years ago was in 2006, the city of Winter Springs sued the county over the rural boundary and tried to overthrow the will of the voters and do away with what the voters' wills were as far as the rural boundary in the eastern part of this county, because they wanted to have the ability to do annexation through that area. Matter of fact, Mr. Garganese was the attorney of record at that point, so I'm sure he's fully aware of that. I went up to the 5th DCA and was further affirmed. Knowing those things were going to occur is a good reason why we have these joint planning agreements, so that you can have discussions. So in December 11th of 2019, Ms. Moskowitz on our staff, after calling and have a discussion with Chris Schmidt at the City of Winter Springs, who was their head planner, It says, as a follow-up to our discussion on Friday, please find a map that shows the enclaves within the city limits of Winter Springs and the Winter Springs water service boundary. On the map of the city of Winter Springs are in blue, properties unincorporated Seminole are yellow, and the cities are shown in gray. I'm attaching an Excel spreadsheet of the 30 unincorporated Seminole County properties within the Winter Springs boundary. Let us know about the JPA. Then we get a second follow-up that is asked that she's just following up to see if any additional questions, to see if Winter Springs is still interested in developing a JPA with Seminole County. That's January 27th of 2020. The response, Tuesday, February 18th, 2022, from Mr. Schmidt, "Hi, Mary, I spoke with our city manager. We are not interested at this time." So the city clearly said they were not interested in having a joint planning agreement to try to work with other government entities to try to cure these matters. When it came before me, and it was my understanding that this project may be something that was going to happen, I asked the property owner and developer to please reach out to the city of Winter Springs, which they did. I then received a call from an elected official in the city of Winter Springs, Mr. Cannon, who said, "Hey, we'd like to build a library there. Why don't you build us a library?" Well, we're not in the business of building libraries in that area. We have enough libraries to take care of. And I urged him, in a conversation with the good mayor, urged him to have a discussion with the property owner and the developer to try to come to some kind of agreement. And I was told, we're not allowed to talk to the property owners, we're not allowed to talk to developers, that's in our code. We can only talk to them when they come before us. Okay. We fast forward, I urge the property owners and developers, try to work something out. They were unable to work something out. You've heard this has been going on since December of 2021. Here we are, 18 months plus later, and we can't get some kind of agreement on whether they would supply water and sewer. During that time frame, there was discussion at the city council about a building moratorium. So if I'm a property owner and I'm going to have a building moratorium, why would I want to do anything with the city of Winter Springs? And then lo and behold, when it looks like something is going to happen, an email comes in the end of 2022, "Oh, let's talk about a joint planning agreement." After so much water has passed over the dam. It's most unfortunate. I dislike it. I have a disdain for what's happened on so many fronts. And let's talk about what was stated earlier. We have this conversation. It's a tough decision for us to make. We all have property rights. Who has the most say? The people that were here 60 years ago, the people that moved in the last 5 years, or the person who develops the last piece of property that may have been in their family? I will tell you what most of the individuals here from Winter Springs, as a young man, I used to ride my horse where your house is at. Do I have the right to say you shouldn't have bought a house there? You shouldn't have developed that? You had certain rights. Those people had certain rights to develop that. All of this is most unfortunate. I would hopefully that we would urge these City of Winter Springs to talk to our staff and engage and get in a joint planning agreement so this kind of unfortunate events don't occur and this cross-border, feuding go on. So with that, Madam Chair, I will move a motion to approve the rezone from M1 Industrial and A1 Agricultural to planned development for a proposed self-storage facility in approximately 4.81 acres located on Tuscaloosa Road, approximately 200 feet south of Michael Blake Boulevard.
There's a motion. Is there a second? I'd be happy to pass the gavel to the vice chair to make a second for further discussion.
I accept the gavel.
So you're running the meeting, girl.
Is there a second?
Yes, second. That was my second.
All in favor? Further discussion?
Done.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you very much. As Commissioner Zimbauer said, this is unfortunate. First of all, for those of you that had a problem or felt that the Planning and Zoning Board meeting was not to your liking, or someone, said something that you didn't like, the fact of the matter, as the chairman said, we're not bound by what they do. They are a recommending body. And sometimes they, it's nice when they flush out some problems and concerns, but what their recommendation is still today, we are making a decision based upon what's in front of us and what we have read and seen. I'm inclined, because of my years as a city commissioner and the idea that I believe that cities and counties, city and the county should work together cooperatively to support the city and their decisions on the future and what they intend to do with their community, as long as it doesn't conflict with, the overall goals of the majority, the people in the county. But in this case, I would love to support the city and their future, but frankly, I don't see any competent, substantial evidence that they have, that anyone can give me that the applicant hasn't done what they were supposed to do. I don't particularly believe that this would be the best project in that area for the city. I hope that they continue to work together with the applicant to decide the future of that, because just because they get the approval here today does not necessarily mean that that's going to happen, that this project's going to happen. But the question before us today, as Commissioner Zimbauer laid out, is, whether or not this has met the standards within our development code, and frankly, I can't find anything that suggests otherwise. I believe that, and I'm not suggesting those that are here today or anyone that I'm not speaking on anybody, but I think that the city dropped the ball in many cases on this. They should have gotten together with the applicant and try to work something out. And it doesn't sound like they did. They gave him an ultimatum in March, but I would love to support the city on this, but frankly, I can't see how I can.
I think Commissioner Delary has asked to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been laid out very clear from the testimony provided by the applicant that they do meet all the codes and regulations of the county, and Mr. Spain did a very tactful job in how to do that. When we sit up here, as Commissioner Constantine talks about, in order to support a comment, support an idea, support voting for or against, you have to have, as was said by not only the chair, but several other people, competent, sustainable evidence. Sitting here today, I see all the evidence supporting the approval of this. I don't see any evidence supporting denial of it. And that is the big issue here today. And I'd like, unfortunately, if there was competent evidence to support a denial, I would support that, but I don't see it at this time.
Are there any other further comments? Commissioner Zimbauer?
I would just follow up and say that this has got to come back before us again, before this is built. This is the transmittal on the zoning portion of this, and we're going to see the final plot plan, will we not?
Rebecca, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the zoning, this is the zoning stage.
Correct.
Included in there is the master development plan.
Right.
The final development plan is more in the technical nature.
Correct.
And is done at the staff level administratively.
Okay.
So it does not come back before you.
That's right. Yep.
Did I state that correctly?
Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
But it's still going to be reviewed by our staff to meet all the requirements. So, yes, thank you. Nothing further?
Nothing further, any further comments? I will close the public hearing at this point. The last comment that I would make is that I would just ask that our staff and the developer, given the comments that I've heard, work together to make sure that this governing body is respectful of the neighbors and does everything that we can possibly do to make sure that we've taken care of you and have provided good neighbor. The last comment that I'll make is that if there is nothing else that we don't learn from this, we need to learn that two governing entities need to figure out how to work together in order to make our neighbors happy. We are here serving our citizens together, whether we like it or not, together, particularly in parcels like this, and we are here to serve you as well, and I would hope that you would be here to serve them and us as well. But the bantering back and forth has not ended up, I think, in the result that we'd like. With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's it. I will pass the gavel back to the chair.
Why don't we take a 10-minute recess and come back at 3:25.
Charity.
You're fine. We're going to reconvene this afternoon's Board of County Commissioners meeting. And the next item on the agenda is item number 35. Mr. Alan Harris.
Hey, Alan Harris, Director of Emergency Management and Animal Services, one of the divisions. Today on items 35 and 36, I bring to you two different things. Now, what I would like to do is I'd like to cover both agenda item 35 and 36 together because they go together, but 35, we will ask for a separate vote for 35 first, and then 36, just to keep things clean. Item number 35 is a request to change the County Code, Chapter 20, Animal and Fowl. The changes that we're requesting, this gone through the Animal Control Board, had a unanimous approval vote on this. The changes are related to three different items. We are better defining boarding, places that house animals overnight. We're removing commercial kennel and non-commercial kennel and the words kennel license. And the reason we're doing that is actually something that you just heard this morning. It's very, very confusing for individuals that own these types of parcels and properties and companies. That there's definitions in Land Development Code, and then there's definitions in Animal Control Code, and our codes are separate, if you will, for that. We don't issue a kennel license, a license to operate a business, but sometimes business owners think that that's what we're doing. So the suggestion is, for your approval by staff, would be to remove commercial kennel, non-commercial kennel, and kennel license, and we're replacing that with standards of care certificate. So that'll be the name. It'll still be required for anyone that owns this type of business. The same requirements continue for the old kennel license is the new standards of care certificate. But we did add, so this is the next thing, is we added some additional language in standards of care certificate. The additional language clarified some information related to boarding. There's a little bit of confusion whether if you owned a training facility and you boarded, we want to make sure that if you board animals at all, that if they stay overnight for compensation, that we're clarifying that in the standards of care certificate. It clarifies the ability of animal control or animal services to revoke a certificate if the facility or the owner operator fails to take care of the animals. This has happened a couple cases, and of course one case going through court right now, and we want to prevent that from happening in the future. So we want the ability very clearly in code to remove their standards of care certificate, their ability to own and service animals if they have demonstrated that they aren't taking care of those animals. It clarifies language, and it also allows us to refuse the standards of care certificate if, for some reason, an owner-operator prevents us from inspecting a facility. So this in code, it will be codified now with your approval that if we request an inspection of a facility due to any issue, someone calls and complains, whatever, that we have the right to go on that property, and if they refuse the right for us to go on that property in operational hours, that we can immediately revoke their standards of care certificate and then and move forward. So that's item 35. 36 is really a consent item, but we obviously didn't want you to vote on the consent item before we bring you the public hearing item. So item 36, if 35 is approved, we ask that you approve 36. 36 simply replaces the kennel license with the standards of care certificate in our fee structure. But it also does one other thing, and it does add a small fee for individuals that owners surrender. It adds a higher fee if an individual owner surrenders, and what I mean by that, brings in a pet for some reason and surrenders the animal to us. If they bring in multiple, the amount would go higher. This is pretty standard in the industry, so we're just asking again for the administrative code, changing the name, administrative, and then adding a small fee for the owner surrenders.
I'll move to approve.
Okay. Commissioner Zembauer?
I have a
And then
question.
Commissioner Constantine and Mr. Chipak. Let's go with the attorney first.
It is a public hearing. It's a
Oh.
legislative matter,
30
but it is a public hearing, so you do have to open it up for public comment.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Harris before we,
Yes.
Mr. Zembauer?
I have one.
And-
Yes.
Okay.
Has there been anyone that's come forward that says, hey, we don't like what you're proposing?
Not at all.
None of the kennels, nobody?
No one at all.
Okay, great, thank
Commissioner
you.
Constantine?
Thank you.
And
Alan-
good job, by the way.
Thank you,
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Alan, today we went through the land development code and we were talking about commercial kennels. And now you're saying you're taking the word commercial out of the kennels. So just explain to me.
Sure. So and that's absolutely the reason why, and, there's commercial kennels defined in the land development code and commercial kennels defined in the animal control code, and business owners are getting confused. They think that when we issue a kennel license, that we're issuing a license to operate a kennel. We don't do that. That's development services. That's what you heard this morning. So this eliminates all that confusion. What we do is more like a health department, where we go out and we check on the status of the animals. We make sure the animals are well fed, that the crates or the runs that they are in are well maintained, that there's no rust or things jabbing out at them, that there's no cuts or scratches on the animals, that they're well nourished, that there's veterinary care. There's information related to noise abatement in our inspections now. So the standards of care is a pretty large health department food check, if you will, at a restaurant, but in a kennel type of environment, an environment where people are boarding animals for compensation overnight.
So the two codes are now lined up together.
That's correct. It would separate that, it would eliminate confusion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delory?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alan, I think you and your staff and Animal Control Board is doing a phenomenal job. I think this is the right thing to do. Looking at your fee structure, the only issue that I have with it is that if you're surrendering one dog, I think there should be no fee. And I really believe if it's two more dogs, it should be $15 each. And then when you go to 4, the rest of it. But I think the first dog, it's, if you can't take care of an animal, then we should just take it at that point.
So I'm glad you asked that, or you made that statement. We always have the ability in certain situations to waive fees, and we do. We waive fees if someone is in a bad situation. We waive fees
And I
if...
understand that, Alan, but I think that it's, I don't want anyone to say, well, I can't surrender my dog because I can't
Sure.
afford the $15.
And we're happy
And
to...
I'd like to ask the board to pay the first dog, there shouldn't be a fee to it. And 2 or more, 2 to 3, 15, and then the rest as stated. I mean, that would be my recommendation.
Commissioners? Bob? Commissioner Zembauer?
I'm sorry, to follow up.
It's not.
Well, I didn't know
Hold on a
if that was about it or not, but we'll get back to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, so thank you, Commissioner Delory. I have the same sentiment for what it's worth, that if we have somebody has the inability or indigent or whatever the case might be, that we find a way to facilitate, and I trust we will, because we always have.
Right, if they have 2 dogs, we're going to waive both fees.
Sure.
I'll be honest with you. And as this happened, I mean, we do a lot of things that people don't realize that we do. Like an individual goes into the hospital and they don't have a loved one in the community, we take care of their animal.
Right.
There's no other place for them to go, so it goes to animal control. We don't charge them for boarding. We don't charge them for food. Of course not. We're not going to do that. We waive the fees in those cases, and we would waive the fees if someone had to give up their dog and they're crying in our lobby, which happens unfortunately
That's the point.
because the apartment doesn't allow it.
Right.
I don't care if they have 4 dogs.
Right.
We're going to waive it.
Well, then we need to say something that we, in this.
It does earlier in the code, so.
Can you point it out for me, because I didn't see it?
And I'll get my second question.
Sorry, Desiree, I'm going to call for your assistance.
So while we look for that
Yes.
answer of where it is in the code, Commissioner Zembauer has do you have a second question?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question is, we all know that all of us pet lovers are very emotional and attached to our pets, some of us more so than others, and some well-founded and some not well-founded. But my concern is an appeal process. If there is some issue and somebody does not agree with that, what is the appeal process?
For the standards of care certificate?
Correct.
Then we would issue, we do this already, we would issue a notice to repair or fix.
Okay.
And then we come back 60 days after.
Okay, but is there an appeal process where, at the end of the day, they just don't agree with your assessment, your staff's, do they come
Yes.
to us? Or
Animal Control Board.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Just wanted to make sure that's handled. So thank you very much, and I would gladly support the notion that,
I mean, if it says that we'll waive it, if it's appropriate per
It's
staff.
item, thank you so much.
Yes, I
have to call my attorney for assistance.
You mean our attorney?
20-5, item D.
right, gives the latitude.
Thank you, Desiree. And I have Desiree Elliott, the Assistant County Attorney that works with us in Animal Services. Thank you. That's helped us with this.
Okay. As long as it's there that we can waive it, that's my main issue.
Okay. We received 2 written comments. Is there anyone, Ms. Beach, who would like to comment in writing, speaking, talking?
That's correct. We have 2 speakers for this item. The first one is Katrina Shaddix, followed by Joe Humphrey.
All right, thank you.
I'll make sure we have the ability to waive it.
I'll just bring them down.
Katrina Shaddix, Executive Director, Bear Warriors United, 1011 Seneca Oak Trail, Geneva, Florida. Alexander Duncan wanted me to tell y'all that he is bringing in his yellow form, because I'm his assistant today, apparently. And I just want to say what an amazing job Alan Harris has done, the staff, animal control, Commissioner Lockhart. Y'all have done an incredible job. I appreciate y'all from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing to help the dogs in preventing animal cruelty from happening again. I really, really appreciate it. And just a couple weeks ago, I ran across 3 starving hound dogs running around in Geneva. I was able to, after 24 hours, they were so weak and emaciated, they had 0 energy. I called animal control. I kept them on the horse pasture. I called animal control. They came out within an hour and took them in. And these dogs were basically walking skeletons. And come to find out, the guy does this over and over again in Geneva. He gets hunting dogs, he puts them in a kennel, he starves them, they get out. Thank God these 3 were able to get out, because now they're at animal control. But I took it upon myself. I donated $300 to Animal Services. The taxpayers are carrying the burden of people abusing and mistreating their dogs, and that's okay. I would pay $10,000 to Animal Services if I had it, because these animals deserve to be taken care of properly and have the chance to go to loving homes. And if the county could announce, and I think you've done it on things before, but this May 27th is my 55th birthday, and I'm spending that at the Animal Services, getting registered to be a volunteer to walk the dogs that are taken into Animal Services, because I want to see those hound dogs again and spend time with them. I would have taken them in, but my 2 German Shepherd rescues would have heart attacks, and it would not be good. If I had the land, I would have my own, dog rescue. But is there a possibility if that penny sales tax gets passed next year, if it's an infrastructure tax, could some of the money be allocated to animal control to take in these animals? Because we know, like you said, if people are charged a fee to surrender their animals, they're going to be less likely, and they'll just let them run free. And if we can have it like, if you take a baby to the fire station, no questions asked, and just have some money allocated for animal services because they provide an incredible service to our animals, which is much needed, and I know we all love our animals, and this is a good way to advocate for them and to make sure that they have the best chance possible to live a quality life. Okay, thank you.
Next, Ms. Beach? Oh, Mr. Humphries.
Joe Humphreys, 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. Again, just to kind of reiterate what Katrina said, I think Alan and his staff are doing a great job. We certainly appreciate the support you guys have given. I kind of had the same concern that Commissioner Delory had. I've been working with helping fund several private organizations in Central Florida over the last 12, 14 months or so, both individuals as well as organizations. And people are, because of what's happened with inflation and so on, I mean, people are like I said, do I buy eggs? Do I buy gas for my car? And when it comes to their animals, it's the same thing. So my concern was, again, same as what we heard from you guys, if I can't afford to feed, so now I'm going to have to pay to get rid of them, they're going to end up on the street. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen certainly throughout the area over the last year or so. So whatever we can do, and I honestly didn't know about oh, by the way, if you have to go to the hospital, we've seen, I know personal experiences here recently where somebody had to go to the hospital, elderly people, nobody to take care of their animals. I didn't realize that this is something that you guys are doing. I mean, that to me is we need to be screaming that from the rooftops. So the work that these guys are doing, we need, I think, to do a better job of communicating that to the community, and we might be able to prevent some of these animals on the street. So again, I concur with all of your comments. Again, I applaud these guys for the work that they're doing. And like I said, it's up to all of us to try to make sure that everyone in the community understands that those options are available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humphries.
One more speaker, Alexander Duncan.
Is that on this item? Okay.
My name is H. Alexander Duncan, P.O. Box 62009, Teovita, Florida. I would like y'all to do what Commissioner Delory asked, which is just waive the fee on the first dog or first couple dogs. The reason I say that is because I would just prefer residents to feel comfortable that it's not going to be a bureaucrat's decision when they get there whether the fee will be waived. They can just be confident when they arrive that they can get the dog the help it needs. Number two, I would like you guys to address what Commissioner Zimbar brought up about an appeals process. I wasn't too enthused by Mr. Harris's response because it's like you just put the appeal process right back in the hands of the bureaucratic office that denied the people or whatever they disagreed with. The other thing is, I really feel uncomfortable with the whole aspect of being able to enter people's property. It just feels really tricky on the constitutional thing for me. And being from Geneva, I feel like that'll put a lot of undue pressure and economic pressure on smaller agricultural operations because people are going to be worried about, whoa, if I got a nail sticking out of my hog pen, I just already know it's going to be some conflict there when you consider, everybody who's going to be, and I'm not just talking about dogs, because, when I used to, work with my mentor on his little farm, the people come out and check the chickens and the pigs and stuff, so I wanted to just get up here and say that about, one, they do need, I feel like you guys should make sure they implement a more robust and better appeals process for people if they get denied or come into disagreement with animal services. 2, I think you guys should be very careful on how you allow these people to be allowed to enter people's private property, especially in areas like Geneva where there's just a different cultural understanding of how I'm raising my animals on property. And that's about it. I just wanted to make sure because everybody just seemed to be like riding off on the good point of like, let's save the cats and dogs, you know. Well, we got to take into consideration also, you know, like I've talked to some of these guys. I got cats wrecking havoc on my property in Geneva. And like I told somebody, it's either the feral cats or the wild rabbits. And my daughters like the wild rabbits a little better than the feral cats. You understand? So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Mr. Harris, anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Yes. First, thank you, Katrina Shaddix, for mentioning the Hounds Around Town program. That is an awesome program. We've had hundreds of dogs now walking in Sanford and various locations being adopted because they see the adoption a sign, if you will, on their leashes. We have public-private partnerships with restaurants where our adoptable dogs are sitting at Hollerback or other places, Willow Tree, and the people are able to interact with the dog, and then they come down and they adopt the animals. We have, and that was very interesting, she also mentioned safe place like you drop off your baby. We still have that. When I got to, I'm from the fire service, as you know, so we've had safe place for a long time where you can drop off babies. That was the first thing I did at Animal Services. At the front of Animal Services, and dogs used to be left tied to the trees in front of Animal Services. There are pins in front, no questions, no ask, you can drop your animal. We have Pet Safe Place here in Seminole County. No other place that I know of in the state of Florida, but in Seminole County we do. So you can drop your animal off in the middle of the night if you want to, because we don't want to go chase it on Esslinger Way in the morning, right?
Correct.
So that still can be done. This is if you walk in, and we're going to talk to the people. If you walk in and you're doing an owner surrender, we're going to talk to the people and see why they're doing that. The appeals process, they can also, so the Animal Control Board is separate from Animal Services. You know, that's a completely different board than us. They provide us, they're appointed board from you all. But they also, and one thing I didn't mention, again, a reason I have an assistant county attorney with me, is that they can also go to the magistrate. So completely separate from all of us, from all of government, they can go to the magistrate, which meets here, and they can appeal it here to the magistrate, and then we would be. We would communicate through the magistrate to identify if she would like to overturn that. And then the last thing was going on to private property. We looked at this a couple different ways through the legal team. The individual business owner always has the right to refuse us. They can refuse us access to their property. But there's a recourse for that. Right. I mean, they have said they want to do business here. They have said that they shouldn't be hiding anything. All we're looking for is the animals. We're not looking for other things. We just want to make sure that the pets that are in their care, not livestock, the pets that are in their care are taken care of well.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Any other comments?
Nope.
I'll go ahead and close public hearing. Commissioner Herr.
I will second the motion of Commissioner Herr.
From the original motion?
Yes.
Okay. Motion with Commissioner Herr, second from Commissioner Zembauer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And so that's item number 35, and now item number 36 we will take up subsequent to that.
Motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign a resolution adjusting changes to Seminole County's Administrative Code 20.5 Animal Services Program countywide.
Second. Motion by Zembauer, second by Constantine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next item, which is item number 37.
Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. Chairman Lockhart, Michael Eason from the Resource Management Division representing MSBU. Pleased to be here today speaking on behalf of the Little Lake Howell, Tuscarora Lake community in regards to the approval of the Phase 1 services at actual cost. Little Lake Howell, Tuscarora Lake MSBU was created in 2020, and it included funding provisions for specific public services to be provided in 3 phases. The purpose of this public hearing item is to finalize the capital assessment for Little Lake Howell / Tuscarora Lake Phase 1 services according to the provisions set forth by Ordinance 2021-2 based on actual project costs of $40,334, as well as county funding assistance of $17,500, and adding in MSBU administration fee and interest of $5,336. The total cost allocated for collection by non-ad valorem assessment is $28,170. This new amount reflects a reduction from the preliminary cost estimate, which at that time was $42,000. Accordingly, the capital assessment per assessed property is reduced from the preliminary estimated assessment, which at that time was $875 per benefit unit. With actual cost, it is now a revised allocation base of $476 per waterfront unit. The owners of assessed property have the option of paying the capital assessment in full without financing fees within 30 days following filing of the resolution or participating in the installment payment plan offered by the county. The installment plan consists of 5 scheduled payments to be billed and collected by the Seminole County Tax Collector via the annual property tax bill, with the first installment to be included on the 2023 tax roll. Following public input, the action requested is for the board to approve the resolution that confirms the assessment assigned for Little Lake Howell, Tuscarora Lake Phase 1 services at actual cost. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meeson.
Public
Commissioner
hearing.
Zembauer?
Is there anybody from the public? I don't think there is, but
Well, I was going to see if we had any questions for Mr. Eason before we...
I don't.
No?
I'm good.
Okay.
Ready to
Any-
make a motion if there's no public input?
Okay. Do we have any public comment cards? No, we don't. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this item? All right, we're going to close public input.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to enact a resolution confirming the non-ad valorem capital assessment for the Little Lake Howell, Lake Tuscarora Lake Management MSBU as per Phase 1 completion and the actual cost for Phase 1 restoration services.
Second.
There's a motion by Zembauer, second by Constantine. Under discussion, I will just point out that this is yet another group of citizens agreeing to tax themselves to improve water quality in this community. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Lost my cheat sheet. We have county
Yes.
county manager update. I'll find it here somewhere.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Commissioners, I have 2 items. First, before Ms. Kuntz discusses the affordable housing item, just want to give you an update on the Yarborough property. As I mentioned today, the reason that I was asking Mr. Anderson from the Southern Group this morning is because he has been working to help us as we start pushing the pursuit of purchasing the property through Florida Forever. I wanted to ensure that if we started the appraisal process, that it didn't impede our ability through the Florida Forever process. So as you heard his answer this morning, so it doesn't. So that's one thing I'd like to discuss with the board. And second, as you know, we submitted the application for the Florida Forever program. We were contacted yesterday, notified through them, Florida Forever, that our first presentation is on June 9th for this. So our application has been accepted. Now we start the process. And so our staff is, in fact, we're meeting tomorrow. We're preparing that presentation. We can either do it virtually or in person, so we'll be talking about that. So on June 9th, the Florida Forever group, it's called the ARC group, will be meeting for our first round of how this process goes through the Florida Forever process. So that's good news. But on the second item, if the board would like us to move forward to move forward with the appraisal of the property, we can do that. As you heard from this morning, we would definitely use one of the state-approved appraisers, just as Florida Forever would. If it goes through the process, Florida Forever process, we can actually hand those appraisals over to them, and that so they could use those as well. So there is a possibility that we could even get reimbursed through the process, but don't know all the answers to that yet, but if you wanted us to move forward with that, as you heard from our lobbyist this morning, we can do that. So just wanted to throw that out to the board.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Thank you. You know, of course, this is my district, and I have been in discussion with Senator Broder. I've talked to some folks in Tallahassee. I've been monitoring this Florida Forever and the funding mechanisms that are available at the state and the timeliness of all that. What my concern is that if you look at the laundry list of properties that are currently in the program that have already been ranked, properties that are asking to be ranked, there are much larger parcels of property, some in Osceola County, some down in Highlands County, a lot of them around the Everglades or water bodies that lead into the Everglades that are already on there that would appear that they're going to be ranked near the top. And there's only so much money to go around. So whether I get support or not from my fellow commissioners, I'm going to move a motion that we go ahead with the appraisal and we start negotiations with either an MOU or a letter of intent with the owners of the family on moving forward with the purchase on behalf of the county.
Madam Chair, I'll second that, but I really think we need to do 2 appraisals, not just one, because with the price tag that's involved with this, the state would require us to do 2. But I'll second it.
All right, there's a motion by Commissioner Zembauer and a second by Commissioner Delary. Commissioner Herr.
I just want to make sure I understand what just happened. So I understand and support the first half of that motion and the first half of your motion with the 2 appraisals. What I don't understand is that we just threw onto the dais the acquisition of this property with no prior preparation for the rest of us that are voting. What's the funding source? You heard, I understand that that would be us in that.
Correct.
Yeah, I can't support, not that I'm not supporting before everybody beats me up about, I'm not supporting the purchase of the property. I am not supporting this as a mechanism for throwing a vote on this dais for what I think is a $35 million acquisition with absolutely no work done or no advance notice. That is just simply not our process, and I can't support that. But I do support the first half, which came from the county manager.
And so the letter of intent could include, and I would expect it to include, staff is going to bring back to us a funding mechanism if the state is not able to take this down. Or partially they can take it down, and partially we would take it down.
That precludes a funding mechanism. That precludes we're doing it. Unless the letter of intent says we have an absolute escape clause, then I can't do that this way. And I'm not saying I don't support the acquisition of the property. I'm saying that we have to allow, I mean, have you vetted this?
No, I have not.
Not cool. I
No,
can't.
but I can bring it back if you would
You
want
can
me to.
bring it back.
yes.
We can have a
Sure.
really good discussion about it. All good with that.
Commissioner Constantine.
I think that was already what we did. If I'm not mistaken, we asked the staff to research, go through the Florida Forever process, but also research all opportunities, funding sources, and I see our county manager shaking his head and all this. So I think we're doing that. I think that I don't know if we necessarily need a letter of intent at this time. I think what the appraisal, yes. The process through Florida Forever, yes. I would agree with Commissioner Zembauer that there's a lot of great properties out there for Florida Forever. But I also know that that because of the corridor, because of the opportunity, we have just as good chance as anybody else is what I want to say. And I don't want to start going off on another direction at the same time that we have this potential. Now, do I think that the staff should be working, as Commissioner Zembauer wants, on alternative funding sources? And other resources that might be necessary. I mean, one of the things, Seminole Forever, I mean, that's part of the beginning of it. There was discussion today, and I've mentioned it to the county manager, you know, when we're talking about mitigation for the CFX, there's possibility of money there. So there's a lot of different opportunities and suggestions. I just don't want to go and, you know, off on another direction while we're still focused on this, and the staff is still researching.
So I'll agree with what was just said. I've also had conversations with folks around the state who are involved in this process who have acknowledged that there are other parcels and there are other applications, but this one is incredibly unique because of the pressure of the development on the parcel. And I think that the folks that I've talked to do this all the time. This is their business, and they are very involved, and I trust their advice. What I will be consistent about is the fact that this board chases shiny objects without a whole lot of due diligence, and we're still looking for the list of shiny objects to come back during our budget process. Buying a piece of property and maintaining a piece of property are two entirely different things. I had an opportunity to sit with the family and their real estate representatives many months ago, and there was, you know, we talked very candidly about the fact that they have two opportunities. They can either wait and see if the county or the state might buy their property, or they have a development order and they can develop it. If they don't want to wait for us to do the work that we have to do to be diligent and use good fiduciary responsibilities to the taxpayers of this county, then they have an alternative and they can execute that. I am not going to be shoehorned or pressured into making a decision today because the family wants to hurry up and have something on the line. So that's where, and again, like Commissioner Hurst said, not saying I'm not all for supporting the process, but I am not in a place where I'm willing to commit that the county would buy this property right now, given the fact that we have no freaking clue where the money would come from or how we would maintain it. So, Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At first, I thought that we were just going to do the appraisal, but since Commissioner Zelmau made the motion, there is no reason why we couldn't do a dual-track approach. In order to do that, there's going to be a lot of negotiations and a lot of paperwork that's going to have to be done before a price is determined. And to buy a property of this size, it's going to take quite a bit of time to put this whole deal together. So I was on the impression, in hearing the motion, as quick as I heard it, that we would be able to look at this simultaneously, as well as trying to determine where the funding source is coming from. Doing one step at a time, I think, would jeopardize this project. Doing it a dual track, as Commissioner Zimbauer has alluded to, is the appropriate way to do something like this. This is not being shoehorned into one location. This is not making a quick decision. We're actually asking our staff to start the ball rolling and to do this simultaneously while the appraisal is happening. And that's why I could support it.
Commissioner.
And that still has to come back to us to make the final decision.
Commissioner Herr.
So there's a very good possibility that this is a wording challenge with the motion, but it was about a letter of intent or a memo of understanding to acquire the property. That is different from a direction to the county manager to find a funding source and to report back with the intent of doing a letter of intent. Those are two different things.
Let me address that. So the letter of intent might say Seminole County would consider purchasing so long as Florida Forever is funding in part or in whole, and we understand that process. I mean, the attorneys can wordsmith that all they want. All I'm trying to do is help everybody understand, and I understand Commissioner Lockhart's talked to people in Tallahassee, but what I'm telling you is, if we want the opportunity to take this piece down with the state or without the state, if that's the ultimate desire, if the funding's there, I agree with all that, we need to move sooner rather than later.
Is there a difference between moving at this meeting or moving at a meeting 2 weeks from now?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
No.
So I would say where I might disagree is that I'm not sure that I believe the county should own this property. And if the state doesn't purchase it and doesn't maintain it, I don't know that this county should. That's my personal opinion. I haven't gone through all the machinations. I don't have all the information yet. But I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily completely sold on the fact that if the state doesn't buy it, then we should. I don't know that I believe that. So I would feel very comfortable with doing the appraisal, which was what the original part of the motion was. I don't know why we would need a second appraisal at this point. That's the first time I've heard that we would need 2 appraisals. But if you have a motion and a second, I don't know if you want to vote or if you want to.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Before you vote, and again, I just conferred with the county manager, I am not sure from a legal standpoint whether, if you enter into an MOU or start negotiating with the property owners, whether that's going to compromise the Florida Forever application. And I can't say with certainty that it will or that it won't. But if you want to proceed, you're proceeding at your own risk, and it may compromise any standing we have with Florida Forever. So if you want to give staff and legal time to research that, we would appreciate that, but the decision is yours.
So I'm okay with that and would ask that I will withdraw the motion with the exception of the appraisal moving forward.
2 of them.
I don't think we need 2 at this point. And get in writing from Tally the answers to these questions. Is this going to impair if X happens, Z happens, Y happens, so we can have some understanding whether we're putting flies in the ointment on behalf of the state. I think I heard this morning we're not. My conversations that I've had said it would not, but I'll leave that up to you to bring it in writing and not have anyone take my sources as gospel.
Can I just
Mr. Gray.
add one thing? And I understand the frustration on everybody, because this is a frustrating process for us. We cannot get those answers out of Tallahassee, and we have been told that it impedes the process and that it could jeopardize the application if we do that. However, we don't have it in writing, so let me go back. Maybe I can even go through that, our lobbyists again and ask those questions and see if he get to the right person that could put it in writing for us to so I can deliver to the board. That's the only concern that I had through this whole process, is that if Florida Forever will buy it, I understand, Commissioner Zimbauer, your thoughts on it too. If they go buy, I think that's the best solution for all of us. However, I understand, and we have talked, I've talked with all of you, we are working on a Plan B, if you will. And we could definitely bring that to the board and talk to you about it. You're right. We just need to get something from Tallahassee that says if we put some intent or MOU in place that it doesn't impede the process. But let me work on that. I'll work with our group and see what we can come up with.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Constantine just had his hand up.
Thank you. And I do think this would be a golden opportunity for us to purchase this. But I think and I see the enthusiasm and the excitement. Let's keep moving on. But I think we've already given the county manager, his marching orders. And, if we need an appraisal, he'll tell us. If we need, if we need alternate financing, it's his job to come back and give it to us. So I think we're on the track that we need to go on. I don't know why we, I'll advocate if it's all possible means to purchase this property. I'll advocate for it because I think it's a golden opportunity. If it's not the state, then a combination or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I do believe that we are on that track. And I do believe that, this is kind of a, test for Darren,
Thank you. Challenge taken.
Just what you always want.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Delary.
Thank you. I really believe that once we get into this, we'll find out we're going to need 2 appraisals with the conversations that I've had with folks. So I'd like to at least give the county manager the ability that if 2 appraisals are needed, that he has the ability to do that.
So I'll be
Well,
honest
again,
with you. Can I just ask, Commissioner Delary, who has told you that we need two appraisals?
Tell the people that I've spoken to in Tallahassee about it. In
Can you
fact,
give us a name? And I'm sorry to pressure you on this, but I'm just curious who's thinking that we need two
I've spoken to the
appraisals?
state lobbyists, I've spoken to Mr. Axel as well, and a couple other people.
And I could add, if you don't mind, in that I believe, and what Mr. Delary, or Commissioner Delary is referring to, is that if it goes through and the state selects it, they will do two appraisals. So I'm sure.
That's exactly
I'm just trying to figure out why the taxpayers of Seminole County
They
need to
will.
pay for two appraisals.
They will.
I'm just baffled by that.
That's probably where we're getting that.
Okay.
But there's no
So,
harm with doing one.
Right.
And if
Right.
the second one's needed,
Right.
just maybe the state does the second one.
Yeah.
If we're using the state
if they're buying it, they should probably
contractor
do
for
it.
first.
Yeah. So, Commissioner Zambauer, you withdrew your motion.
Yes.
Can you
So-
make, and did the seconder,
If it's
if
withdrawn,
it's
it's withdrawn.
withdrawn?
It sounds like to me that we've all reached consensus on what the county manager is going to be doing and bringing back to us.
I think we should
Which sounds like
do a motion.
alternative. So I'll move a motion that the county manager bring back to us at the next meeting if possible, alternatives to the Florida Forever, as well as proceed with an appraisal using one of the state's authorized contractors for appraising the property.
Second.
Why are we asking
Okay.
him to bring back alternatives at the next meeting? I don't understand what the pressure is for this. I'm really very perplexed. Commissioner Constantine?
You know, thank you, Madam Chair. It's interesting,
I'll answer
you know,
that.
you haven't decided whether it's good. I would love to see this property, but we share this. We've already given the direction to the county manager. The fact of the matter is, June 9th is, I guess, 4 days before the next meeting or something like that? I mean, let him do his magic. You know, I mean, let him come up with the alternatives. We already gave him that marching order to come up with alternatives, including Florida Forever, but if not Florida Forever, other things. So I don't know why we're asking him to do the same thing I think we've already done.
Well, I think we formally put it in a motion
So,
position.
Commissioner,
and so
I'll share with you that my reason for the second is not necessarily for the county manager to come back with, this is how we do it precisely, but
Right.
it's so that we can have an informed conversation with some time to prepare, which may include, these are the reasons why you would not do it. It's a conceptual conversation at that point. I by no means, by that second, nor do I think you did by the
I'll
by the
follow up when you're done.
motion.
Yes.
that you're coming back with the, how we're going to do this because.
Right.
I don't think we're there.
Agreed.
So
Agreed 100%.
We're all kind of confused.
And so
I agree.
the best business plan has a plan B and maybe a plan C. What those are in this case, I don't know. But I think we're best to do as much due diligence up front, weigh our options, state, other partners, other funding sources, at least understand what we may or may not be dealing with. That's all I'm asking for. No commitment. We need to understand that. And I think that's correct. June 9th is going to come soon enough.
Right. Oh, sorry. Didn't want to cut you
And
off.
so would you expect that to come back in the county manager's report? He's been updating on I think this all started with your update,
Yes.
as a matter of
Yes.
fact, and then a motion to acquire something
Yeah.
or to put an MOU together. So I think in the next county manager report, there would be a discussion around the pros and cons of.
Provided he's gathered all that information.
Understood.
And Madam Chair, working with Florida Forever, as I have many times, we're not going to know anything after June 9th anyway.
Right, no, it's
I mean,
just the
this is
start.
nothing more than a presentation.
Right.
And then they will take it back and not close doors, but they will take it back and they will be analyzing all of this. So
And if you remember the process, you're absolutely right, Commissioner Constantine. The process is, this is the first review. We get to make a presentation. They're going to review it over the summer. October is when they make their cut list, if you will. They vote, and then it moves forward with the process there. The only suggestion I would make, if it's not at the next meeting, if you will, our budget work sessions are on June 20th, and I know we've talked with all your offices, which is the following week. June 20th is a full day. We've actually reserved the 21st, half a day from 1 to 5, and I think we put that on your calendars because we have other items that we want to discuss with you regarding the budget, one being those outstanding commitments and CIP projects that we have already done that we want to make a presentation to you. If we could, I mean, that is an opportunity because that's a planning meeting. We could put that on there and you could see where all this falls. So that's another option if you want to put it on the budget discussion items that we have on the 20th and possibly the 21st. Or if you would like, I can bring it back at the next meeting, but you're right, I won't. Hopefully I can get something from the state by that time, but I can, if you want to have a plan B that talks about other alternatives. If you would like to, to have in our back pocket if we need to.
Just give us an update.
Right.
So the motioner would accept an update at the next meeting and a
An update at
more
the meeting
formal
after that.
update at the budget session.
We could do that.
As we have a Plan B for the preparation of the Plan B.
We could do that.
I just wanted to point that out.
Right.
You might want to limit the updates next time.
So just so I'm clear, the motion is that the county is going to do an appraisal for the property, and then we're going to have an update, which you had already said that you would provide us at our meetings. And you're going to continue working toward alternatives for what might happen if Florida Forever does not come through with funding. All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. The next item.
I just have sorry. Sorry, I heard something. Just one other item, and normally, I'm afraid to bring this one. Usually, I would bring this up through an agenda item, but there's some due diligence going on that for a possible affordable housing project that would actually have to access through our property to get. If it does, I'm going to have Ms. Kuntz just describe it to you, and if it is that we'd like to move forward, we can start those discussions, and then I will formally bring that back for have a process on how we do this and have it go through the normal process. But I just wanted to see if if the board would entertain us pursuing using a piece of our property to have access to a larger piece of property that would actually, could eventually come up with 35 possible affordable housing units. So if it's something that, if it's okay, we could have her briefly go over it real quick and see what your all thoughts are, and then I could bring it back, if that's good.
This is your report, my friend.
Good afternoon. Melanie Kuntz, Assistant County Manager. Last week, we met with Kim Fisher with SciCorp and Zach Miller with Miller Construction, and they proposed a plan that they had. There's a piece of property they have a contract on, and I apologize, I did this at lunch. This is the county-owned parcel right here. Here's Ronald Reagan. Here's 1792 and Lake Mary, to give you a kind of an aspect of where we are. This is the county-owned parcel in this green color that you can rarely see. So the parcel...
Can you zoom out a little bit?
Or speed it up.
Yes, with help.
Oh, God. No.
Yeah, there's no more.
Zoom in.
There's no more.
No.
That's it?
There is no. This is just, I just did a quick little... So the parcel is here. This is the parcel that... This right here, and I apologize, I didn't realize you couldn't see it, is the one that the contract is on. The greenish color is the county-owned parcel. So they're
I'm sorry, is that Rooster Court?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
That helps a little?
Well, yes, it does. It helps.
On the other side of the road, it's Nolan.
Right, got it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So they came to us and said, during our due diligence, is there a way that the county could surplus, either give, sell a portion of the land? And I'm going to show you this. This is the, maybe you can zoom. This is what they gave us at the meeting to show how they would do the project. This right here is the county parcel. This is the piece that they're looking to have surplus so that they could come off of Ronald Reagan and get into this subdivision, which would be a 35-unit workforce development property. The remainder parcel of that would be right here. And this would be what the Habitat for Humanity might be able to use to build an affordable home. So we're looking to see if you have an interest in us trying to work with them to come up with a solution so that they could build these 35 units.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is to get your input, whether staff should be utilizing its time to pursue this further, or
That's
whether
right.
this is not a good idea and
That's
you
right.
do not want us to pursue it.
Right.
If you vote in the affirmative, staff will ferret out the issues and bring it back to you, but an affirmative vote does not mean that we are approving anything at this point. It's just authorization for staff to further explore this.
Yes. Right. No, thank you.
Commissioner Zembauer, because it's your district, and then Commissioner
Oh, okay.
Constantine.
So I'm aware of this to the extent that we've had this whole work session through the years of affordable housing, workforce housing, and we've put things in place to promote that, to promote getting this kind of building or workforce housing and affordable income housing. I think this is a great opportunity if we think this is what we want to do, is a developer that is committing to give workforce housing that is a minimum of 30 years of workforce housing, because they can get the density, but they need access to a parcel that we own. And is that something we want to participate in, or do we want to monetize that in some fashion? And if so, does that equate to the developer is going to give us workforce housing or not? And I think that's really what it boils down to, is should we use it as another tool in the toolbox to promote affordable housing, workforce housing, in and close to the spine of the county, which is 1792. And for me, it's any creative way to promote that and get that workforce or affordable housing. And the fact that we may be able to use it for habitat as well, I think may be a win-win for everyone. Just my 2 cents.
Commissioner
To
Constantine.
say it quickly, anything outside the box for workforce housing we need and consider. So if the staff feels this is something, or if the county manager feels this is something that he's willing to put staff time in to pursue, I think we should, and therefore I make a motion that we do.
Second.
There's a motion and a second under discussion. Commissioner Herr?
I'd just like it to include the possibility of monetizing the piece of property. I don't want to be in the business of maintaining it. I don't want to, if this is surplus, I heard that word, so it's surplus.
Yes.
We would have to go through the process to do that.
Right, but, so we have no critical use for it, is my understanding, but that would be the further research. But I would like to at least see us get something back for the taxpayers.
As the sponsor, as the motioner, I just wanted you, all possibilities were in
Understood.
that. I don't want to restrict. I want to give as much opportunity to bring back the best deal for the county and for workforce.
As creative as possible.
Commissioner Delary?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I support the motion, but I just want to make sure that it's compatible with the surrounding areas, to make sure it's got the right setbacks.
That's a Rebecca question.
Yeah, we'll look at all that.
That's
I
all.
understand that, that's what I said. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying I support it, but these are the things that I want to make sure. I'm not asking for it to be reviewed this moment. There are things that need to be looked at. We need to make sure it's compatible with the surrounding areas. We're going to make sure that there's enough setbacks, enough ease, all that stuff.
Yep. Yes.
That's all I'm asking.
So,
Agree.
as the former District Commission aide for District 5, when this was in District 5, many moons ago, this area flooded a lot. The Bradburys, who own a considerable amount of property on Rooster Court, were regulars in the District 5 office. So I would just make
That's another
sure that
question.
we know that that's an issue. It looks like we bought this property from the original owner back in 1994. So we've been
Because it
sitting on,
flooded.
we've been sitting on it for a hot second. And I thought there was a process that the county had for people purchasing county property who were interested and for for putting, so why are we not doing that process?
And we would go through all the process of that. For our surplus property, we would definitely do all that. The reason I just brought it to you, just to see if, because of the affordable housing component of it, I just thought before I put any, because in order for us to surplus it, they would want, to have an opportunity, I'm sure, to put in for that, just like anyone else. And so when it became to affordable housing project, I thought, let me bring this up to you all. If this is a possibility, before we put a lot of effort into going through that process without a plan, and I want to ensure that we have a plan that we're moving towards.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing else.
You good?
Promise. Nothing. I'm done.
I have to tell my husband I lied. I won't be home in time for dinner. All right. Thank you all very much for that. County Attorney's update. Anything?
Just have one item today. I would like to introduce our summer intern, Anna Martin.
Welcome.
Who will be with us through the summer. She is a second-year law student from Miami School of Law, and she has been a Seminole County resident for 13 years. So we're glad to have her and look forward, and she's had quite the education today.
Please come back tomorrow. We only do this every other week.
What high school did you go to? Lake Highland. There you go. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much for being here and spending the summer with us. We hope you have a great time. I'm happy to be here. Great, thank you. District Commissioner reports. District 3, we're starting with Commissioner Constantine today.
Well, I hope I start a trend because I think that we've gone through a lot of things, and I'm just not going to, I have no other report other than to quote my friend to the right of me, all's good in District 3.
All right, that's great. District 5, Commissioner Hunt.
All is good in District 5.
Yay, I am starting a trend.
Commissioner Delary, District 1.
Thank you. I'll make this brief. On June 7th, we're going to be having a Calino meeting here, and we'll be talking about the Wekiva Basin Study. I thought that'd be a good example on all the different basin studies that we're doing, so that the cities can actually see what we're doing, and hopefully they will bring that idea back to their cities to try to understand which basins are in their cities and try to add to our basin studies as well. Even though we're taking the information into account, we're not getting into the weeds in each one of the cities. We're just doing it unincorporated. And that will be taking place at 6 p.m. here in the county. And then also, would be remiss, this coming Monday, on May the 29th, is Memorial Day. It is definitely a time of remembrance, and there's going to be a lot of events, and just wanted to wish everyone well and also remember those who pay the ultimate price. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great reminder.
District 2, everything's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, District 4, all I have is a board appointment that I have to apologize for. I thought I had done this, and I had not. So my apologies to the Parks and Preservation Advisory Committee. Mr. Doug Crenshaw, I would like to appoint to a 2-year term.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Motion passes unanimously. I have a request from Seminole State College to send a letter of support to Governor DeSantis related to their PICO projects. We have.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Beg them
Motion-
not to veto, is that what it is?
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what it is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And that is all I have as well. Yes, Commissioner Constantine.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, very quickly. Based upon what happened today with Winter Springs, just to ask the county manager to make sure that, we have already gone out to all the cities to offer to work with them on JPA, so we're the good guys, if you will. I mean, at least we're being proactive, and we're working with them, and if they reject it, that's their business. But I would just like us to do that.
Sure.
I think that's completely appropriate.
Which we have and continue to do.
Yeah, do again.
I think, there's been changeover in staff, there's been changeover in elected officials, and all of, in in many of our cities, and here at the county. We've had just some changeover, so it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and reiterate that and re-extend those olive branches. So great thought. We have public comment. I'm going to go ahead and reread for anyone who was not here earlier today our rules for public participation. In accordance with the operating policies and procedures of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners, Section 2.175, public participation before the board. All comments shall be limited to the subject being addressed, but we are in public comment this afternoon, so this is whatever your topic is that you would like to address. But all public comments should avoid personal attacks, abusive language, and redundancy. Disrespectful, rude, irrelevant, or slanderous remarks or disruptive behavior may subject the individual to removal from the board chambers. The chairman may curtail repetitious comments. Individuals will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Our first speaker is David Smith, followed by Katrina Shaddix, and our last speaker is Alexander Duncan.
Good afternoon, or should I say good evening? Madam Chair, the rest of the board. David Smith, 2424 Orange Avenue, Sanford, Florida. Thank you. And I am here today as part of a continued effort to highlight alternative options for representation in the best interest of residents, community members, and stakeholders of Midway. Today, I'd like to express a litany of community concerns, starting with these 3 factually documented items. One of my goals for today is to ensure that our county commissioners are informed of these issues. So on November 7th, 2018, Mrs. Gloria Blake, representing the Midway Canaan Community Water Association, appeared before the County Zoning and Planning Committee alongside Midway Coalition current Executive Director Emery Green. First item is a 2019 report from the Seminole County Sheriff's Office in regards to Mrs. Gloria Blake's and the misappropriation of Midway Canaan Community Water Association funds. This close association between the two is just one of the many items of concern for the residents and community members of Midway when it comes to the trustworthiness of the Midway Coalition. So in November of 2021, a notarized letter was submitted to Florida's Department of State Division of Corporations. In this letter, Ms. Felicia Green states that her name was fraudulently added as a Midway Coalition board member without her knowledge or her consent. Second item would be Ms. Felicia Green's letter to the state. And it should also be noted that 2405 Right Way, Sanford, Florida, the address listed belonging to Felicia Green and the rest of Midway Coalition board members is actually owned by Seminole County School Board. So also, Midway Coalition's most current filing information registered with Florida's Department of State Division of Corporations lists elected Seminole County School Board member Autumn Huff Garrick in the very same board position that Ms. Felicia Green was fraudulently added to, placed in, according to Mrs. Green's notarized letter. In closing, I've referenced these items to the board, including allegations of fraud, malfeasance of leadership, misappropriation of funds, and the involvement of a public official. The fact that an original board member of Midway Coalition alleges fraud, is deeply concerning. So is the association between the executive director and disgraced former Midway Canaan Community Water Association president, who was implicated by the Sheriff's Office of Embezzlement. It is further concerning that Autumn Huff Garrick, who was duly elected by the people to represent us in the interest of K-12 education in Seminole County, is directly involved with this organization. The close association between Midway Coalition and our county school board is disturbing, and it leads many of us in the community to question whether we can trust some of our elected officials and public institutions from working with private entities to push agendas that will reprehensively affect Midway for decades to come. And I do sincerely thank you all for hearing me today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Our next speaker is Katrina Shaddix, followed by Alexander Duncan.
Did you have questions for him?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Not at this time.
We did, we'd ask.
Okay. Katrina Shaddix, 1011 Seneca Oak Trail, Geneva, Florida, 32732. Oh, I have those. Thank you. The first thing on the packet let me comment on the purchase by the county of the property. I'm the biggest tree hugger you're ever going to meet, and I oppose the county buying that property. And it ties into when I contacted Representative Smith, State Rep Smith, a couple years ago to ask him about getting that property purchased by the state to save it, for wildlife habitat corridor. He said that he cannot get involved in anything that makes his constituents money. And I think it gets into some muddy waters if y'all are able to vote on having the developer make money in a certain way with development, and then vote on giving taxpayer money to that same developer or landowner. It's much better to have the state buy it. And as a matter of fact, when I attended the Wildlife Corridor Summit last April, I was looking for purchasers of the Yarborough property and came across Hank Vinson of the FDAC's Family and Rural Lands Program. He stated that land is a perfect candidate for purchase for the state for conservation. And because at that time, that property was not listed as a candidate for the Florida Forever program, and that is an extensive process. So maybe if both of those programs, you could get funding for both, that would be great. And remember, the feds gave the state $300 million to buy lands for the wildlife corridor. The state added $100 million. So the state has $400 million to buy those lands. I don't think we need to go into our county budget, especially when we didn't put a land buying program on the ballot. Once we get that going, then that's how we should buy the land if it comes to that. But I'd much rather have the state buy it. I've talked to FWC last week and asked the commissioners to support the state buying the Yarborough property. And I've also asked that the FWC manage that property, because along with buying the property, it is millions of dollars to manage that property. Is the county willing to put that money aside to manage it forever? No. We can't afford it, because we can see that we don't have the money to manage our natural lands as now. It was $800,000 a couple years ago, and I think it's way down now. So it's not just buying the property, it's managing that property forever, and we cannot afford to do that. That is something that is best left to the state. And the state, the FWC manages Split Oak property and many other properties around the state impeccably. They know what to do. And our county natural lands program is great, but let's leave this to the state. They have the money and the resources to do it right. I had such good news about Bookertown and what we did. Can I have the 3 minutes for Executive Director? Because it's good news.
Sure.
Oh, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So in the packet, you see your Gardening for Nature. We have given out 11,000 of these in the county. One was at the historic Sanford Garden Tour that just happened a couple weeks ago. Others go out in our bear care packages. When people ask for straps to secure their trash, they've been getting these. And we're going to be giving them out at the FWC's Landscaping for Conservation Summit in South Florida in 2 weeks. So it's really taking off, and people are super interested in gardening for nature and how they can make their yards wildlife friendly. The second is a postcard that I designed and created, had printed up. We're going to be giving these to all new Seminole County residents, and it just talks about what they can do to responsibly coexist with bears. The third is my lobbying sheet. I went to Tallahassee a few times to lobby for some things. And if you look at the top left, under the green thumb, it says retrofit existing septic tanks with cost-effective reovation technology and to incorporate the Pure Alta technology. These are two things that are going to help our water quality. And like I said, that reovation technology is going to save this county millions and the state billions. And I would love to have Reovation come and give a presentation to the county. I think y'all are going to really love this. It's a solution that saves money. And so Bookertown, on May 6th, we had a lot of, I'd say about 15 volunteers. And it took so the 15 volunteers, myself, about $15,000 we invested to the Boca community. I purchased bear-proof trash cans for all of the residents because the straps won't work on the existing trash cans. And we also planted a bear food garden, and a lot of people say, what are you doing attracting bears? It's also called Restoring Wildlife Habitat, but Restoring Wildlife Habitat sounds like a very burdenous endeavor. When you tell people to plant a bear food garden, it's easier than saying restore all the wildlife habitat, but what we did simply was take 30 native blueberry plants and plant them in the surrounding conservation green areas that are on the outskirts of Booker Town, because we want to keep the bears in the woods and out of the neighborhood. So Joe Humphrey and I were just there Saturday putting mulch and fertilizer on these and staking them off. We've talked to all of the residents. They're totally on board with doing a diversionary feeding program to keep the bears in the woods and out of their neighborhoods. They do have a big bear problem, and we're hoping that this investment in the community will help us figure out a different alternative than to destroy that last remaining green space in Booker Town, where the mom with 4 babies, the bears are living right now, because they'll be, once you take away those woods, the bears are going to be in the yards more than normal. And there's also some venomous snakes, like I said, that are already going to show up once you take away that forest. So we want to work with the county more to help the people of Booker Town, and they're really excited about this investment, and they want to do what they can to preserve the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, I do have a question for you. So the Gardening for Nature brochure, the illustrations are just adorable. Ms. Marquez, does she live here in Seminole County?
She does not. She's amazing. She lives in not University of Florida, in Gainesville.
Okay. All right.
Around there.
I'm going to look her up.
Okay.
Awesome.
She's awesome.
Yeah, really love those. Thank you very much.
Alexander Duncan is our last speaker.
All right, Mr. Duncan. And I know you like to keep it 100, but we got to keep in the, we got to keep in the guardrails of public comment.
I just got one thing to talk about.
All right, name and address if you would for the public record.
Oh, my name is H. Alexander Duncan, P.O. Box 62009, Oviedo, Florida. Okay, I just want to talk about Seminole County Code Chapter 228, Seminole County Ordinance 2005-41. And all I want to say is, I noticed that a lot of code stuff was covered in this agenda. Land Development Code, Cat and Dog Code, a lot of codes were covered. I just want to get to that code that I'm mentioning sooner than later. I just want to address the code. Let me repeat that. Seminole County Code Chapter 228, Seminole County Ordinance 2005-41. Okay, so again, I want that code to be addressed so that we can address the proximity of sex offenders to bus stops, because currently the code does not define it. So a sex offender could legally stand at the bus stop with our kids. Okay, it doesn't include rec centers, and I think recreational centers are just like parks. It includes playgrounds in parks, but the West Side Center in Goldsboro is not in the code. The bus stops are not in the code. That's it. So thank you, guys. And, I'm really enjoying these county commission meetings I've come to lately. So keep up the good work, guys, and hopefully I'll see you again soon, but on a different topic. See ya.
I'd be happy to give an update.
When he comes in.
If you're enjoying these, we might want to check it out.
Yeah, we do want to check your backpack if you're enjoying these. I will give an update. We actually convened a meeting with regard to that code. I would accept the compliment that you actually think we have the codes memorized, because until you identified that, none of us would have known what you were speaking of. You can all lie if you'd like to, but none of us would have understood what you're speaking about. We did have members from the sheriff's attorney's office, the school district's attorney's office, our attorney's office. We had members from the sheriff's active policing unit with regard to these individuals. We had members from the school district transportation division, and we had our senior team, Darren and I, attended. We had a very productive discussion, which we are not going to discuss publicly for about 1,000 reasons. But just do know that there is a lot of behind-the-scenes work that's going on to make sure that our approach is as tight as it can possibly be with regard to keeping our children safe, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you very much. Any other public comment? Anyone else who wishes to address the board? All right, we will be adjourned at 4:44.